If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you've definitely grabbed a broomstick, pointed it at the sky, and screamed at the top of your lungs. He-Man is an absolute classic, the jacked hero with the bangs, saving the day and delivering moral lessons after kicking Skeletor's butt left its mark on an entire generation lounging in their living rooms. That's how most of us were introduced to the franchise. But what almost no one knows is how that harmless cartoon, created purely to sell plastic action figures, hides some insanely deep world building. Forget those silly little missions with Orko. The true essence of the story evolved into a brutal apocalypse involving the eradication of magic, heavy-hitting deaths of classic heroes, the collapse of the Kingdom of Eternia, and the bizarre revelation that the franchise's greatest villain was simply Prince Adam's uncle. We're talking political conflicts, the end of days, and a jaw-dropping emotional weight, proving that these characters abandoned their childish tone a long time ago. So get ready, because today on the channel, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. What started as a simple toy commercial turned into a grand and unforgettable adventure. Evil Lyn and Beastman attack Castle Grayskull using the power of a cosmic comet. The door goes down, but He-Man, Battle-Cat, and Man-at-Arms are already waiting inside. After defeating the villains, the sorceress warns them that the comet is the real problem. The mission now is to find Zagraz. The team discovers that Zagraz himself is to blame, having destroyed a comet in the past, leaving another lonely and full of hatred. Skeletor seizes the opportunity, takes control of the rock, and unleashes monsters against the mountain. Prince Adam pulls his classic disappearing act, turns into He-Man, and shreds the creatures, while Orko gathers the pieces. A direct attack on Snake Mountain fails, forcing the sorceress to teleport everyone out to avoid a total wipeout. Zagraz's unusual solution is to use the collected fragments to create a new comet, filling the rock with love and kindness. When Skeletor's comet attacks the castle, He-Man goes toe-to-toe with the meteor until Zagraz releases the peaceful version. The two collide and neutralize the threat. Skeletor flees, while Adam fails at trying to control comets, leaving Orko to be chased by a training globe. Mid-training, He-Man reverts to Adam for dinner and gets the classic scolding for being late. Majestra appears out of nowhere with a cabinet of wonders. King Randor steps in, is impressed, and invites the woman to live in the castle. A terrible idea. Down in the dungeons, Majestra and the king reveal themselves to be Evil Lyn and Beastman in disguise. The real Randor was already locked up. Using the shaping staff, Evil Lyn turns the king into a goat and Orko into a cricket. The fake king attempts to annex Grayskull. At night, Cricket Orko warns Adam, who turns into He-Man. Evil Lyn transforms Teela into a frog and He-Man into a golden statue. She takes everyone to the castle, where Skeletor has already created Faker, an evil clone of the hero. The sorceress investigates, takes a hit from a magic ray, and turns into a half-tree, but breaks the spell with telepathy and frees He-Man. In the main fight, Faker gets the worst of it and falls into an abyss. The Royal Guard arrives to clean up the mess. Skeletor attacks Man-at-Arms, but the sorceress saves him. He-Man breaks the staff, reversing the spells. Threatening them with the broken half, the magic backfires on Evil Lyn, who turns into a snake and slithers away after Skeletor. Losing his patience, Skeletor uses invisibility helmets to invade the palace and kidnap Prince Adam. Meanwhile, Orko gets carried away cleaning the room and accidentally makes the power sword disappear. Taking advantage of Man-at-Arms and Teela's absence, the invisible Skeletor kidnaps Adam, demanding He-Man as ransom, and chains him up in the Banshee jungle. Orko confesses the sword is missing. The sorceress opens a time portal, allowing Orko and Cringer to retrieve the weapon from Eternia's past. In the cave, Adam throws a flying creature attractor. Stratos picks up the signal, finds the prince, and calls in the cavalry. To buy time, Man-at-Arms builds a robot He-Man, perfectly fooling the villains. The team delivers the sword to Adam, who finally transforms into He-Man. During the fight, Skeletor turns invisible and starts beating up the hero. He-Man solves this by throwing Orko's robe over the villain. He crushes the helmet and sticks the attractor to Skeletor's belt, drawing a swarm of wolf bats that sends him running for his life. Orko promises to clean his room properly next time. Skeletor shows off the diamond ray of disappearance and erases a creature to prove its power to his gang of villains. swords. At the palace, Trapjaw attacks from a war sled. Adam sneaks out to become He-Man and destroys the villain's bionic arm, but it was just a distraction. The others invade the palace. Skeletor uses the ray on a falcon, Zoar, and simply deletes Man-at-Arms, Randor, and Marlena into another dimension. Orko escapes and warns He-Man. The sorceress warns him the diamond must be crushed, but whoever does so might get trapped in the stone's power. During the invasion of Grayskull, He-Man deflects Skeletor's ray right back with the power sword, knocking the diamond away. Upon crushing it, the hero begins to fade into the other dimension, but shatters the stone at the last second. The royal family returns, and Skeletor flees. Later, Adam keeps up his clumsy facade, blowing a hole in the wall with his broken chariot. On Phantos, Adam and Man-at-Arms receive photanium from Queen Elmora, unaware that Skeletor is blackmailing the planet. When Elmora refuses to hand over full control of the metal to the villain, Skeletor possesses her with dark magic. On Eternia, Adam discovers that the new weapons break on any impact. The unbreakable metal is fake. He-Man and his team head to Phantos, and Teela disobeys orders to follow them. There, they find the possessed queen and the people forced to work in the mines. The group storms the throne room. Seeing Elmora resisting his mind control, Skeletor creates a magical clone of He-Man. To prove who the real one is, He-Man breaks the photanium chains. With the farce exposed and the freed queen fighting alongside the heroes, Skeletor and his henchmen flee. Man-at-Arms scolds Teela for disobeying, but admits she saved the day. Queen Marlena reminisces about her past as an astronaut, while Teela looks for Adam, who ditched training to go fishing. Orko blows up Man-at-Arms' lab, trying to build a music box. The mood gets heavy when Teela vents to Man-at-Arms about her biological parents. Since he keeps her mother a secret, Teela seeks answers from the Oracle of the Crystal Sea. Orko leaks the plan to Adam, who turns into He-Man and follows her. Skeletor and Merman are watching. Merman wants revenge on Man-at-Arms, and the Oracle reveals why. 20 years ago, Man-at-Arms saved the Falcon Zoar and a baby from Merman's sacrifice. Teela is captured, and Merman uses the Crimson Pearl to summon the demon Backle. He-Man shows up and frees Teela, while Zoar destroys the pearl. The demon turns on Merman, but He-Man saves the villain and buries the monster under a cave-in. The truth comes to light. The Falcon Zoar reveals herself as the sorceress, Teela's mother. To protect her daughter, she erases her memory, leaving only the feeling of a mother's love. He-Man promises to keep the secret. Skeletor and Evil Lyn invade the Temple of the Fire People and steal the Spellstone. Evil Lyn uses the artifact to punish Eternia with brutal storms. He-Man and his crew set off for the temple, but Skeletor traps them underground. Evil Lyn disguises herself as a harmless old lady and blames the royal family for the storms. Manipulating the villagers, she plants the seed of the creeping Horak in the palace. The demonic plant relentlessly swallows the walls, trapping the king, queen, Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Orko. He-Man and the team escape the trap and rush to the palace. There, He-Man forcefully takes the Spellstone and uses his own power to obliterate the creeping Horak. Skeletor flees. The stone is returned to the Fire Temple, and peace is restored. Skeletor receives the Wheel of Infinity from Darkspy, the ultimate key to wiping Grayskull off the map. The sorceress warns them. The villain has traveled back in time to destroy the castle before it even existed. The heroes use the time window and land in the past. They save Zilora, leader of the Snake Clan, and with her help, invade Skeletor's fortress. During the clash, Zilora is captured and taken to Dragosaur Isle. He-Man rescues her, but a desperate sorceress warns that time is running out. They return just as Skeletor activates the wheel. Instead of stopping the machine, He-Man spins it faster, overloading the structure. Skeletor escapes, and He-Man hurls the artifact to explode in deep space. After saying goodbye to Zilora, the team heads home. Skeletor and Beastman steal eggs from the Dragon Mother and drop her to the bottom of a gorge. On Eternia, an egg hatches, and Skeletor uses a growth serum. The hatchling instantly becomes an adult that breathes fire on everything. He-Man and his friends fight until Man-at-Arms freezes the beast with his freeze ray, but chaos erupts worldwide with more dragons. It was all a distraction. Skeletor invades Grayskull using the Dragon Pearl, overpowers the sorceress, and shields the castle. He-Man and Teela storm Snake Mountain, beat up Beastman, and break his control over the monsters. Freed, the dragons incinerate Skeletor's shield at Grayskull. Skeletor flees, recovers the pearl, and grows to giant size, but he falls off a cliff and is saved by He-Man. The villain drops the pearl into the bloodfalls, and the dragon itself rescues the jewel, melting the spell with its fire and freeing the sorceress. The inventor and his daughter Elena visit the palace. Orko warns that Jarvan has escaped from the mines, but it's too late. Jarvan ambushes Elena and Teela. He-Man saves them, but Elena is devastated that she couldn't help. Jarvan disguises himself and offers Elena a magic potion of strength and a ring to summon him. The effect wears off quickly. Withdrawal hits hard, and she almost kills Adam in a sky sled accident. Without the potion, Jarvan demands his price. She must steal her father's transmutator. The addiction wins, and she hands over the machine. Jarvan reveals his true form, but He-Man shows up and defeats him. The sorcerer escapes, but Elena takes control of her own life, uses the ring to summon Jarvan to the palace, and sends the villain back to the mines. Adam, Man-at-Arms, and Orko discover the City of the Ancients, secretly spied on by Skeletor. Aaron and Una look for a job with the villain and are sent to the ruins to fetch the masks of power. Upon putting on the masks, they are possessed and turn into Demos and Torella, dangerous ancient sorcerers. The sorceress warns that the duo is after the sword of the ancients. At Snake Mountain, the sorcerers deliver such a humiliating beatdown to Skeletor that He-Man himself is forced to step in and save his enemy. In the underground battle, He-Man reaches the sword of the ancients and merges it with his power sword. Losing control of the artifact, the entities vanish. Aaron and Una return to normal, completely rethinking their villainous careers. The peaceful Widget's mine and hide the dangerous mineral Korodite in their fortress. Skeletor attacks the place to forge an unbeatable armor. He-Man sees the distress signal and drives the forces of evil away. Evil Lyn takes on the disguise of a maiden named Nadira. She tricks the Widgets, getting almost everyone to leave the fortress, seduces young Squinch into showing her the mine, and steals the Korodite, escaping as a fireball. He-Man tracks the villains down to the volcano cave. Skeletor puts on the armor and shouts the classic, "I have the power," annoying the hero. The fight goes down, but the new armor doesn't save the villain from catching yet another inevitable beatdown from He-Man. Man-at-Arms creates the laser lasso, but Orko easily escapes the bindings. Adam spots the Falcon Zoar, makes a strategic retreat, and turns into He-Man. The sorceress warns that Trapjaw and Beastman are gathering an army in Stardika. In Stardika, the place seems deserted, but it's a trap. A pterodactyl kidnaps Man-at-Arms. He-Man destroys the mechanical battalion of Serpentoids by using a giant boulder like a bowling ball in a perfect strike. Teela brings the improved laser lasso. Beastman tries to steal it and ends up tying himself up. Teela freezes the factory with her blaster. Skeletor rescues his henchmen and warns that a bomb is about to explode near Man-at-Arms. He-Man finds his friend and throws the explosive through the roof, solving the problem. Skeletor tests the Collector, an energy-sucking ship, turning Man-at-Arms and the palace guards to stone. The villain converts the living statues into energy, and during his getaway, petrifies Ram Man and Orko. The real plan? Use the victims to awaken the giant Colossus and destroy Grayskull. The sorceress sends He-Man to find the Fire Jewels, a mission he accomplishes in true Indiana Jones style. With the jewels, the sorceress creates a reverser. As Colossus marches on the castle, He-Man boards the Collector, hands out beatings to the villains, and installs the device. He provokes Skeletor into firing, dodges the blast, and the beam hits Man-at-Arms, undoing the widespread petrification. Colossus refuses to back down, so He-Man shatters him with a single punch. Skeletor fires concentrated energy, but He-Man deflects it, damaging the ship and securing the victory. At an amusement park, Beastman disguises himself as a zookeeper and uses a little white cat to lure and kidnap Cringer. Skeletor demands He-Man in exchange for the tiger. Ignoring the front door, He-Man scales the outside of Snake Mountain, saves Cringer from a cage over a precipice, and transforms him into Battlecat. Teela, who came after them, is captured by Evil Lyn, but He-Man defeats Beastman and tosses the witch into the same makeshift cell. On his throne, Skeletor creates mirrored illusions of himself. A pot of pepper Orko gave Adam falls from He-Man's belt. He throws the pepper at Skeletor, triggering a sneezing fit that breaks the villain's spells. He-Man rescues Teela, hands the pepper back to Orko, and the magician ends the day sneezing non-stop. In Avion, Skeletor tries to steal the Staff of the Ancients. The artifact can release the monster Molcrum from an an unbreakable crystal, and if used for evil, it will blow up Eternia. The villain kidnaps Stratos and creates 50 clones of him as a useless distraction to free Mulcrum and lock the heroes away. He-Man crushes the stone barrier with ease. At Grayskull, He-Man holds off Mulcrum with brute force, while Stratos retrieves the staff. The artifact starts to collapse, but He-Man hurls it into orbit. The explosion traps the creature back in the crystal, and the staff falls back to the ground intact. Skeletor flees, and the team enjoys the rest of the festival. Orko invents a random spell and summons Daimar, a demon from another universe. Man-at-Arms warns that if the creature grows, it will rip an interdimensional rift in the sky. The beast quickly spins a cocoon and marches straight for Grayskull, trapping He-Man, Teela, and even Skeletor and Evil Lyn, who are trying to interfere. With the rift opening in the sky, Orko asks why Daimar is attacking them. The demon coldly answers that it is his destiny. He-Man delivers a speech about making your own destiny. Skeletor invites the giant monster to rule the universe together, but Daimar sees through the scam. He rejects the offer, takes the hero's advice, and peacefully returns to his dimension. The insufferable Lady Edwina visits the palace, and Orko tries to impress her by fetching his old magic medallion from the tar swamp. There, he catches Skeletor pouring primordial potion to resurrect the gigantic dinosaur Dracodon. Man-at-Arms and Teela attempt to rescue, but are saved by the always punctual Stratos and He-Man. The Dracodon crushes the royal palace walls and traps the family, Orko and Edwina. Orko teleports himself and the girl out, coming face to face with He-Man fighting the beast with raw strength. Orko retrieves the medallion from the creature's back. Edwina demands he wish for riches, revealing her pure self-interest. Disappointed, Orko uses the jewel to wish none of this had ever happened, banishing the villains and reversing the damage. The king kicks the spoiled brat out. During a disastrous invasion, Skeletor and Evil Lyn use a spell to wipe He-Man's memory and banish him to an unknown dimension. Zodak sends Orko, Ram Man, and Cringer through a portal to remind He-Man of who he is. Amnesiac on the planet Tranus. He-Man bumps into Gleedle. The place was ruined by Plundor, who offers He-Man a partnership to steal the planet's life force. Going by instinct, the hero refuses. The team arrives and Orko hands the power sword to the hero. By saying the classic catchphrase, He-Man regains his memory, transforms Cringer into Battlecat, and brawls with Plundor's rocket to knock it out of the atmosphere, saving the planet. The Trollendriel warns Orko that the monster Dragoon is terrorizing her world. Adam follows Orko through the dimensional portal, but the travel effects revert him back to Adam and Cringer. On Trolla, physics makes no sense, and Adam can't turn into He-Man. Dragoon exploits this glitch and captures Driel. Cringer deduces that in a backward world, the magic words must be said backward. Adam tests it, it works, and he becomes He-Man. In the fight, Dragoon falls into an abyss. He-Man saves him and drops a flawless moral lesson. Shaken, the monster gives up evil.
I may be your enemy, but you're not mine. Maybe saving lives is better. You've got some heavy thinking to do. I hope you come to the right conclusion.
With peace restored, Orko and Driel reveal their faces, a Trollan engagement, and the mage returns to Eternia, finally earning Man-at-Arms respect. The mood at Snake Mountain isn't great. Skeletor is furious at Evil Lyn and Triclops' failure to plant the growth globe at Grayskull, but Eternia's real terror today is Jeremy, Adam's spoiled little cousin. King Randor makes Adam babysit him, which turns into a nightmare. Jeremy trashes Man-at-Arms' lab, makes fun of Ram Man, and steals a vehicle, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man to save him. Evil Lyn sees the boy as an easy target and, disguised at the fair, swaps Jeremy's rock softener for a boomerang. The plan is cruel. Melt Grayskull from the outside while the globe destroys it from the inside. Adam and Man-at-Arms figure it out and race to the castle. Jeremy, feeling his own stupidity, follows on a robotic horse. There, chaos reigns. The sorceress can't contain the globe, and He-Man, hit by the softener ray, loses his strength. Evil Lyn traps Man-at-Arms. That's when Jeremy is finally useful. With a perfect boomerang throw, he knocks the device out of Triclops' hands. Man-at-Arms reverses the ray. He-Man regains his strength and captures the villains. Since magic failed against the globe, He-Man resorts to brute force. He crushes the artifact, asks the sorceress to levitate them, and kicks the threat into space. face. The boy returns home humbled, and the castle survives. On a diplomatic mission to Toron, an earthquake hits the city. Adam tries to become He-Man but freezes when the singer Celise appears and stops the tremor with her voice. Hypnotized by her, he leaves Teela dead with jealousy. The Prime Minister explains that beneath the city lives Yogg, a creature capable of destroying Eternia, kept asleep only by Celise's singing. Skeletor orders Evil Lyn and Trapjaw to kidnap the singer, and they succeed. With the tremors back, He-Man splits the team. Teela and Man-at-Arms go rescue Celise at Snake Mountain, while he faces Yogg in the caves. At the villainous base, Skeletor tries to hypnotize Celise into forcing Grayskull's jaw bridge open with her singing. Along the way, Man-at-Arms is captured and taken to the Isle of Ice in the middle of the Lake of Fire. After this useless geographical distraction, Teela and Man-at-Arms reach Grayskull. Celise snaps out of hypnosis at the last second and refuses to open the castle. He-Man gives up on the caves and arrives just in time to beat up Skeletor's crew. Yogg finally emerges, sending the villains running, but He-Man and Celise send the monster packing back to the center of the earth. A banquet at the palace is brutally interrupted when Azrog, a fugitive troll and sorcerer, tears through the roof. He wraps Teela in a spell. Adam sneaks away, and Orko frees her. He-Man appears, but Azrog's pet, Karg, grows to giant size. The villain fires a ray. He-Man blocks it, and they flee to the witch Spydra's castle in the Mystic Mountains. He-Man, Teela, and Orko go after them. There, Orko's uncle, Montork, redirected by an accidental teleportation, is already bothering Spydra. When Azrog arrives, he turns the witch into a zombie and orders Karg to hunt down the heroes. Trying to impress his uncle, Orko plays with Spydra's wand and ends up trapped in a giant beanstalk. Outside, He-Man rips off the gates using sheer force to trap Spydra, and Teela snaps the wand. Karg tries to abduct Teela, but He-Man lassos him in midair, shrinks the beast, and stuffs him in a sack. Cornered, Azrog brainwashes Orko, but Montork saves the day by breaking the mind control with family love. Azrog is arrested, and Montork praises Orko, who, euphoric, causes an explosion that obliterates the castle. He-Man can only shield Teela and laugh at the chaos. Obsessed with Teela, the wizard Malik makes a deal with the demon Locus. Without reading the fine print, the demon immediately destroys a dam to flood local farms. Malik's assistant Karen realizes the colossal mistake. Locus, in disguise, tells Teela that Malik destroyed the dam out of loneliness. Unsettled, she and Ram Man go to confront him, followed by He-Man. Up on the mountain, Karen confronts Malik. Locus, refusing to accept any opposition, revives a fossilized monster, traps the girl inside a glass jar, and orders the creature to take her away. He-Man gives chase, but Karen tells him to shoot the monster, uses magic to sprout wings on the jar, and lands safely. Malik kidnaps Teela on a magic carpet, but the spirit of evil appears to claim the wizard's soul. He-Man tries to intervene, but his fight against the fire ends in a stalemate. To save Malik, Karen offers her own soul, but the spirit cannot touch her. Souls freely given out of love are impenetrable. The villain retreats. He-Man and Malik repair the dam. Malik finally notices Karen, and Teela shocks everyone by flirting with Ram Man. The crisis begins with Man-at-Arms suffering from a pollen allergy, and quickly escalates when a dam bursts. The vehicles are immobilized by weeds, but He-Man and Man-at-Arms arrive riding Battle Cat and save the farmers. They discover that strange seeds were sold by Skeletor, but the sorceress calls He-Man. The palace is being devoured by alien vines that are draining the planet's energy. He-Man holds up the collapsing columns through sheer brute force. Teleported to Castle Grayskull, he finds Skeletor dealing with the exact same problem. The culprit is Evil Seed, a plant villain who has kidnapped Man-at-Arms and Teela. Skeletor ignores his subdued henchmen and agrees to an unthinkable truce with the hero. In this bizarre crossover, the greatest hero and the greatest villain team up. They retrieve an ice sphere from the ice mountains and shatter it over the castle. Their combined magic creates heavy snowfall, freezing Evil Seed and ending the green threat. Taking advantage of Skeletor's day off, Evil Lyn tries to conquer Eternia by turning Kor, a powerful wizard, against the heroes. Triclops kidnaps Kor's daughter, Mira, and Evil Lyn projects an illusion framing He-Man and Man-at-Arms, making the wizard swear revenge. Ignoring common sense and strict orders, Teela goes to train in the Shadowlands. Orko tries tries to protect her, but his magic fails. She is captured by Kor's reptile men, and the wizard escapes, demanding a ransom. He-Man and Man-at-Arms surrender to Kor to explain the situation, but the vengeful wizard uses an orb to control He-Man's shadow, tossing him into the prison of the Crimson Scourge, a fire beast. While He-Man brawls with the monster, Teela and Orko escape, infiltrate Snake Mountain, and rescue Mira. They return just as Kor is about to throw Man-at-Arms to the beast. Seeing his daughter saved by his supposed enemies breaks the spell. He-Man shatters the prison, dragging the beast out with him, and extinguishes the Crimson Scourge by diverting an underground river. In the end, Kor and Teela both learn to listen to their families. The evil sorcerer Tauron forges a magic amulet inside a dragon but triggers a dimensional short circuit that traps Prince Adam, Cringer, and Orko in a manticore's cave. The spell pulls in two wizards from Trolla, Gark, who is brainwashed, and Orko's uncle Montork, who falls into the cave. Taking advantage of the family reunion, Adam turns into He-Man, tosses the manticore against the wall, and smashes a path through the solid rock. Tauron orders Gark to capture Montork at the palace. They slip into Grayskull disguised as butterflies. Under attack, the sorceress barely manages to lower the drawbridge, but He-Man stalls the Talon fighter mid-air, leaps through the gap, and saves her. Back in the cave, Battlecat attacks Tauron, and the amulet flies over to Orko, who panics and teleports everyone to Grayskull. There, Battlecat pins Tauron down. The villain orders the hypnotized Montork to grab the amulet, but Orko breaks the spell. Montork tosses the artifact to He-Man, who crushes it.
He-Man, see what your sword can do with this.
Stripped of his magic, the fearsome Tauron shrinks into a harmless little old man. Orko nails a magic trick and delivers a speech about how villains never change. But on the Isle of Tears, the sorceress Sibylline disagrees. Corrupted by the troll Gorgon, she desperately wants to be good again. Gorgon is not pleased and throws her into the dungeon with King Danton. She teleports away and asks King Randor and He-Man for help. In a bizarre change of pace, King Randor gives no orders, and Sibylline casually strolls around the palace, putting up with Orko's suspicions and even saving the king from a loose dragon. The sorceress warns that Sibylline needs to prove her change of heart. In the inevitable showdown, He-Man traps Gorgon inside a submarine, while Sibylline duels Evil Lyn, who pulls a classic villain move and abandons her partner to his fate. King Danton reclaims the throne, and Orko learns that people can indeed change. Skeletor evicts Beastman from Snake Mountain through a trapdoor. At the palace, Man-at-Arms preps the attack track tank for a tour. Randor wants He-Man as the sole escort, frustrating Adam. Orko accidentally arms the tank's weapons, and Adam transforms into He-Man to stop it. Randor thanks him, dismissing his son's presence. Tired of playing the useless prince, Adam vents to the sorceress and decides to go on the tour his own way. En route, Beastman uses Shadow Beast to flip the tank, freezes the escort, and kidnaps the king to win his job back. At the base, he finds out Skeletor is away and manages to impress Merman. Adam turns into He-Man, rips the cell door off its hinges, and escapes with Randor, who confesses his love for his son. On their way out, Beastman curses Skeletor out of relief for being home, right as the boss walks in. Back at the palace, Adam drops a subtle hint about He-Man's punch, leaving Randor confused but intrigued. The palace pretends to forget Orko's birthday to throw a surprise party. However, a tornado in Visilia interrupts the drama. He-Man solves the problem by spinning at high speed, creating a counter-tornado and hurling the first one into space, but his sword disappears in the process. The news gets worse. Castle Grayskull has been sucked into a white hole. He-Man instinctively jumps into the abyss, and Teela falls in after him. The other side is a hallucinogenic dimension. Guided by the sorceress, He-Man finds the castle with Skeletor already sitting on the throne. The sword magically drops into He-Man's hand, and he resolves the situation in the most absurd way possible. He lifts the entire castle structure on his back and throws it back through the white hole. Grayskull lands perfectly intact on Eternia. Skeletor flees in frustration, and Orko's party finally happens. Adam and Cringer are resting in the jungle when a flying saucer attacks Princess Rhea. Transforming, they save the girl and escort her to Operon. Along the way, a laser beam knocks a tree onto He-Man, throwing him into a river. He is captured and wakes up in the dungeons of Targa with amnesia. Introduced to the gladiator Garn, Queen Belina, and the wizard Draka, He-Man dodges dodges a freeze ray but has no memory of Rhea. Battlecat falls through a trapdoor, and the princess is kidnapped. In the arena, He-Man fights Garn, who has been magically enhanced by Draka. A heavy blow conveniently restores He-Man's memory. He wins the bout and demands Garn's freedom. Refusing to enlist with the Queen, He-Man, Garn, and Battlecat rescue King Thales. Cornered, Draka triggers an earthquake to flood the entire city, but He-Man and Garn tear open a chasm to drain the water. Targa is saved, Garn becomes king, and He-Man heads home. The laboratory on Selkie Island is surrounded by monsters, and historian Hovar calls for help. Man-at-Arms and Teela invent the VHO, a technological whistle that scares off animals. Adam boards a Navy ship to deliver the device. The voyage goes under when Merman sends a kraken and robotic fish to steal the VHO. The ship sinks, and Teela and the VHO go missing. He-Man dives in, tracks a mechanical fish, and breaches the cave where Teela is trapped in a tank. He challenges Merman to hand-to-hand combat. Merman accepts even without tricks, losing the fight in seconds. On the surface, Merman returns riding the kraken. He-Man uses the whistle to scare the beast and hurls it far away just to be safe.
Kraken throw.
Since Teela dropped the device into the ocean, He-Man dives back down with infinite patience, retrieves the equipment, and successfully completes the delivery to the island. In the jungle, Adam and Cringer find the tree people and the cave dwellers fighting over a star child. The girl falls down a hole leading to the underground vine jungle. He-Man climbs down, finds the orphan, and takes her to the palace for a hearing. There, the child projects a magical glow that forces everyone to sympathize with her, revealing exactly why they want to control her. When the hearing begins, she screams, runs away, and delays everyone with magic. He-Man finds her, and, feigning empathy, convinces her to return. The tribes start bickering again, and she flees back into the underground jungle. During the second rescue attempt, the leaders risk their lives to save her from a cave-in, proving they truly wanted peace. The girl agrees to split her time between the tribes, and He-Man signs off the episode with an awkward wink to the audience. Skeletor disguises himself as an ambassador and gifts Randor a jade bust, but Man-at-Arms sacrifices himself, turns to Crystal, and the villain escapes. He-Man learns that the cure requires Granomir, the most powerful of dragons. The sorceress cannot intervene, so they set off for the Ice Mountains. After fighting trolls and smashing through a force field, they find Granomir, who demands a sadistic price: cut down and burn the Sky Tree, the oldest tree in existence. In the forest, the Sky Tree itself agrees to be sacrificed for Man-at-Arms, who had saved it before. However, He-Man outright refuses to take one life to save another. They return empty-handed and face the dragon, who is thrilled with the result. It was just a character test. Impressed by the duo's compassion and honor, he hands over the healing spell. Man-at-Arms is restored to normal, and Cringer decides he never wants to meet another dragon. Teela and Adam stumble upon a castle tied to the legend of Lord Tyron and Lady Valtira, a couple who drained the forest 200 years ago and fell into a deep sleep. The villains awaken, and Valtira drains the life out of a tree. Adam falls near her, and because he reminds her of her husband, Tyron goes mad with jealousy, sending a giant spider to kidnap his wife's new pet. Adam escapes, turns into He-Man, and saves the creature. Tyron knocks down a dead tree, which He-Man catches midair. In the castle, Teela gets caught in a web, and Valtira awakens a giant snake, which He-Man swiftly wraps up in a curtain. Tyron snaps and drains the vine holding up the castle. Valtira calms her husband, swearing her love. With the ceiling caving in, He-Man saves everyone. Outside, the couple destroys their amulets, magically regaining their youth and abandon their villainous ways, while Adam pretends he was stuck in a tree the whole time. Zodak, the cosmic enforcer, warns the sorceress of an imminent threat. Adam transforms into He-Man, rushes to Grayskull, and discovers that Eternia is the center of the Big Bang, and Skeletor is digging his way toward the Starseed, the infinite energy at the planet's core. Skeletor tries to collapse the tunnel, but He-Man punches his way through the solid rock. Skeletor traps Orko in a magic bubble and blackmails the hero into digging for him. He-Man complies, but upon reaching the chamber, he discovers that Orko had already swapped the real seed for a fake one. He-Man grabs the true star seed, and the power goes straight to his head. He plans to use it to annihilate evil entirely, earning Skeletor's enthusiastic support for a villainous partnership. But the hero's morality prevails. He rejects absolute power and banishes the villain. He hands the seed over to Zodak, who reveals it was all a cosmic test to prove if He-Man was still worthy of his power.
He-Man, you have succeeded admirably in your test.
Test?
You did?
But why?
Pody shatters Man-at-Arms' window and flees to the vine jungle, leaving Orko to take the blame. Man-at-Arms and Adam send Orko after her. The fugitive Raygo kidnaps the girl and captures Orko as well, planning to use Pody to overthrow her father, Chief Merlo, and steal the more Firestones. He throws the kids into the Zegone, a mechanical rhinoceros. Transformed, He-Man chases the vehicle alongside Teela and Merlo, but Raygo has already installed the stones as the tank's glowing eyes. He-Man clears temple rubble through sheer brute force to save the children. Using the power sword, He-Man deflects the beams, destroys the machine's legs, and shakes the chassis until Raygo and his goons fall out. Raygo is sent off to hard labor, and Pody finally takes responsibility for the broken window. Teela, Adam, and Cringer search for a magical spring that grants He-Man strength. The trip descends into chaos when Donovan steals the egg of a giant rock bird. The mother bird kidnaps Teela, delaying Adam. Donovan drinks the water, and the hatchling emerges and grows instantly. Telepathically in control, Donovan takes He-Man high into the sky and drops him into freefall. The hero saves himself by flapping 2 giant feathers he plucked from the bird. Battlecat, unexpectedly fluent in bird language, negotiates a truce, and as Teela sent back, the sorceress prepares an antidote that accidentally turns Orko into a baby for a few minutes. He-Man and Battlecat corner Donovan. The potion makes the giant bird docile. The flock departs in peace, and He-Man cuffs Donovan while laughing uncontrollably. Adam and Teela hit an invisible barrier and get separated. Adam is captured by women who hate men, while Teela is taken to the utopian city of Arcadia, ruled by Queen Sumana. The city hides a dirty secret. Men are enslaved in the mines to power the protective dome. Down in the mines, a slave named Ananda warns Adam that aggressive mining will collapse the city. Sumana ignores the warning because it came from a man, until the ground cracks and Arcadia begins to cave in. Teela convinces her that they need to stand united. Adam turns into He-Man, violently digs his way to the center of the earth, and forces a river of magma upwards to harden, creating an indestructible foundation for Arcadia through pure strength. Sumana decrees total equality and invites Ananda to rule by her side. A pyramid sprouts from the sands of time. He-Man, Orko, and Ram-Man destroy the robotic insect guards of a fortress and reprogram the brain of one to track down Trapjaw. They discover the cyborg is taking orders from a masked figure named Lord Mask, who simply abandons his lackey at the first ambush. The archaeologist Malaktha wants to explore the pyramid, and Mask, in disguise, tries to lead them into a trap, which fails. At night, Mask launches a sneak attack. Orko pulls off his mask, and He-Man slices it in half, evaporating the villain into smoke. The path is clear for exploration, but deep inside the monument, a glowing mask signals that the real problem hasn't even woken up yet. With the pyramid secured, it's confirmed. It is the tomb of Shokoti, a sorceress from Eternia's Dark Hemisphere. The apprentice Stanlin wants to explore, but Malaktha sends him back to the palace. Stubbornly, Stanlin convinces Ram-Man to knock the door down while everyone is asleep. As soon as the passage opens, Shokoti's mask comes to life and drags the boy into the shadows. Adam turns into He-Man and leads the rescue. Inside, Stanlin faces a giant rat and is dragged to the sanctuary. Shokoti reveals her plan to awaken the sleeping beast and cover Eternia in eternal darkness. He-Man, Battlecat, and Ram-Man storm in, smashing everything, but end up captured by Shokoti and her demons. In the chaos, Stanlin escapes with the power sword. The sorceress contacts the boy through the sword, telling him he must face his fears to fix this mess. Stanlin returns to the lair just as the beast awakens. Shokoti's blasts deflect off the sword's blade, slicing the bonds and freeing the heroes. Wasting no time, He-Man drops a massive statue on the beast's head, shoving it back into the pit and causing Shokoti to vanish. Outside, a humbled Stanlin agrees to return to the palace. End of his reckless adventuring career. The sands of time become the stage for an explosive conflict. A race begins between heroes and villains for Eternium, an incredibly rare energy source hidden in a neutral country. Caught in the crossfire is Chad, a boy raised by his wheelchair-bound grandfather, who dreams of the glory of joining the royal guard. The harsh reality of war sets in when Chad is attacked by a Spitosaur, a monster conjured by Merman in the desert. He-Man saves him, but the situation escalates. Trapjaw decides to swallow the Eternium. The radioactive diet gives him the brute strength to go toe-to-toe with He-Man. To secure backup, the cyborg promises Merman he will turn 2/3 of Eternia into an ocean. Trapjaw attacks, but his magical steroid trip has an expiration date. When the power fades, he desperately searches for more ore, but the last piece is swallowed by Burby, Chad's little pet. The stone acts as a poison, forcing He-Man to rush the creature to the sorceress for an emergency medical rescue. The episode slows down with some real emotional weight. Chad's grandfather confesses the real reason he uses a wheelchair. He was a soldier too, and in a reckless act, he fired a blast to scare off orcs, bringing a mountain down on his own legs. The illusion of glory shatters, and Chad finally understands the true and painful cost of war. While prepping for Queen Marlena's birthday, Adam decides to scare Orko and Cringer. He brings in a guy in a robotic suit whose face changes, alternating between a green monster, a robot, Skeletor, Beastman, and a normal orange-skinned face. The figure's name? Man-E-Faces. While the guy gets ready, Adam recalls how they met. A while back, Man-E-Faces terrorized the little widgets, invading their castle purely to demand soup. Still, Skeletor saw potential and decided to recruit him. The sorceress warned He-Man, who took Teela and Orko on an expedition. Before Man-E-Faces could eat his soup, He-Man showed up. The guy tried to use his monster face, but took a severe beating. Right before the final knockout, Skeletor teleported him straight onto his ship. The sorceress warned that Man-E-Faces wasn't evil, just lonely, and that Skeletor was about to attack Grayskull. On the ship, Man-E-Faces refuses to work for the villain. Skeletor plays dirty and has Beastman use his animal control powers, which works perfectly since the victim was still wearing his monster face. While Skeletor blasts the castle, Beastman and Man-E-Faces try to pull down the drawbridge with a grappling hook. He-Man arrives, holds the line, and the sorceress breaks the mind control. Free from hypnosis, He-Man and Man-E-Faces send the villains packing. In the end, the guy explains he acted like a monster because he was treated like one, and promises to change. Orko suggests the name Man-E-Faces, and back in the present, he becomes the main attraction at Eternia's parties. The royal family's vacation in the region of ice is cut short when hidden traps in the snow swallow Queen Marlena, King Randor, Teela, Man-at-Arms, and Adam. Only Orko is left. The little mage floats down a passageway and discovers that the giant spider Slush has frozen everyone in blocks of ice. The Ice Lord plans to use them to lure He-Man, but doesn't know what the hero looks like. Orko transforms his wand into a sword and introduces himself as He-Man. The Ice Lord tests the pocket-sized hero by throwing the spider at him. Panicking, Orko fires off fireballs, causes an avalanche, and ends up frozen, but a rebounding flame thaws him out. Impressed by this power, the villain reveals that Skeletor kidnapped his daughter Snowflake and proposes a trade. Orko demands the release of his assistant, Adam. Away from the enemy, Adam turns into He-Man and storms Snake Mountain with Orko. They sneak in while Skeletor is throwing a tantrum over his magic TV signal. Orko ties up the guard, Trapjaw. He-Man and Orko free Snowflake from a superheated cell. Beastman attacks with boiling water, but the girl freezes the liquid mid-air, allowing He-Man to smash the cauldron over the lackey's head. During their escape, Skeletor seals the exit. Snowflake freezes the floor, causing the villains to slip. He-Man hurls Trapjaw at them like a bowling ball, busts Snake Mountain open through sheer strength, and saves the group. Back in the ice, the king is freed, peace is restored, and Orko gets a kiss from the princess for his intense, short-lived career as He-Man. Orko tries to boost his powers using a mystical crystal, but a bouncy little white creature named Gronk bumps into him. The crystal explodes, Gronk disappears, and all of Orko's magic is drained. Without his spells, he suffers an identity crisis. Adam and Teela comfort him, and the sorceress informs them that Gronk absorbed the energy and was sent to another dimension. She opens a portal, and He-Man, Battlecat, and Orko step through. They arrive on the planet Omeros, where a two-headed man explains that the sorcerer Zolt of Castle Ackle is using Gronk's powers to destroy the planet. At the castle, a blue giant serves as the perfect warm-up for He-Man's fists. Inside, Zolt strikes dramatic poses on his throne, wearing a purple robe and a classic burglar mask. Out of patience for the villain's theatricals, He-Man defeats him swiftly with a simple trick, trashes some mechanical lions, and rescues Gronk. When it's time to leave, the portal vanishes. He-Man lets out an apathetic, "Oh no!" but the two-headed man steps up to recreate the gateway. They shake hands, and the hero drops his trademark sign-off laugh. Back at the palace, the sorceress restores Orko's magic, and he immediately goes back to testing the royal court's patience with explosive tricks. Universal order has been restored. It's been a terrible night at the palace. Adam, Cringer, King Randor, Marlena, Man-at-Arms, and Tila all share a bizarre nightmare filled with slime monsters. Man-at-Arms pieces it together instantly. Dark Dream, a villain he had sealed in the Chamber of Darkness, has managed to escape. Dark Dream recruits Evil Lyn and the wizard Tavor with a highly ambitious goal: plunge Eternia into total darkness by pulling the moon out of orbit to create a permanent eclipse. While Adam and Tila fly out to investigate, Dark Dream invades Tila's mind mid-flight. Adam has to act fast. He lands, transforms into He-Man, catches the falling girl, and reverts back to Adam before she wakes up. Tila genuinely believes the clumsy prince saved her. The lunar spell alters Eternia's gravity. Everyone floats as the moon goes into a collision course. They head for Grayskull, but Dark Dream ambushes the sorceress while she is in her Zoar form. Unable to reveal his secret, Adam slips away to bring He-Man. The hero's solution to the lunar apocalypse is absurdly epic. He grabs a giant rock, packs it with Nadroxan explosives, and hurls it at the moon with brute strength. The impact knocks the satellite right back into its proper orbit. The sun returns, Dark Dream flees like a frightened vampire, and the crisis ends with Orko accidentally trapping Man-at-Arms inside a giant bubble at a picnic. With no time to rest, Tila and Adam respond to an urgent distress call at the Temple of the Book of Ancient Eternia, where they find Man-at-Arms literally frozen in time. The culprits are the Zactons, robotic guardians of the book with a strict zero-tolerance policy for intruders. The professor steps up to handle diplomacy and convinces the Guardians to release Man-at-Arms in exchange for repairing Kappa, a damaged Zacton. The peace is short-lived, as Trapjaw breaks into the temple determined to steal the book. Adam does what he does best and brings He-Man into the fray. The Zactons' initial panic fades quickly when they realize who is destroying the place and who is defending them. The Guardians get in on the action and fire their time ray straight into Trapjaw's chest. The cyborg freezes instantly, ending the fight in a swift and humiliating fashion.
That's amazing.
Trapjaw is shipped off as cargo to work in the prison mines, and the Zactons bid farewell to the heroes, now fully understanding the concept of an alliance. A massive electrical storm engulfs the palace, sending Orko into a panic. He knows exactly what the lightning means. Aramesh, a relentless electrical being, has come hunting for him over a secret the little magician brought from his home dimension. Watching it all unfold from Snake Mountain, Skeletor gives in to his basic instincts and decides to steal the secret for himself. Aramesh invades the palace, takes down Tila and Man-at-Arms, and grabs Orko. Adam covers himself with a shield and turns into He-Man, but Skeletor teleports both Aramesh and Orko away. The villain strikes a deal with the electrical entity and appears in the throne room holding Orko in a sack, demanding the secret as ransom. The secret is actually a dimensional sphere hidden within Castle Grayskull. Using it as bait, Man-at-Arms sends the villains to the tar swamp. In the swamp, Orko uses the sphere to open a portal. Blinded by ambition, Skeletor dives headfirst into the rift. Aramesh realizes it's a trap and steps back. He-Man engages the electrical villain in hand-to-hand combat, having his energy violently drained in the process, but he musters enough strength to hurl him into the portal. Zoar rescues Orko at the very last millisecond, and the tunnel collapses, trapping Skeletor and Aramesh in another dimension. Back at the palace, Queen Marlena knights Orko. The newly dubbed Sir Orko hesitates, admitting he was terrified the whole time, but He-Man delivers the moral of the story. There is no true courage without being afraid first. Skeletor orchestrates the theft of the Gem of Protection from the Griffin's shrine, hiding it in the royal palace so the creature destroys everything while searching for it. Beastman and Trapjaw surprisingly manage to get the job done. In the palace, Thad, a frustrated page boy who does nothing but complain, finds the gem and decides it will make him important. Meanwhile, Man-at-Arms proudly presents a freeze ray way that doesn't work. The Griffin, a pink, lion-headed dragon, attacks the village of Chandor. He-Man simply reroutes a river to drive the beast away and returns to the palace, swearing the threat isn't over. Knowing the gem attracted the beast, Teela finds Thad and patiently convinces him to return the item. When the Griffin attacks the palace, Man-at-Arms' machine fails again, and He-Man throws down with the monster, hurling it into space. However, the beast can breathe in a vacuum and comes tearing back through the atmosphere. In the chaos, the monster starts a fire. He-Man throws a mountain into a lake to put out the blaze, causing a flood that swallows the gem dropped by Thad. The object hatches, revealing it to be a griffin egg. The hatchling is terrified of water, and Thad risks his life to save it. The father griffin gives an approving look and flies away, while the whiny page boy ends the day cheered as a hero. Nepthu, a ragged man, finds the sun scarab in a desert temple, instantly transforming into a muscular tyrant. To prove his power, he captures the sorceress in her falcon form. In the lab, Man-at-Arms invents the communicator, which functions like a regular radio, but there's no time for questions, as Adam receives a telepathic cry for help from the sorceress. Cringer tries to avoid the mission, but soon gives in and accepts turning into Battle Cat. At the temple, a giant tornado greets them. He-Man spins rapidly in the opposite direction and hurls the entire whirlwind into space. Next, a colossal scorpion attacks. The hero rubs the desert sand so fast that the heat creates a glass wall, trapping the monster on the spot. Inside, Nepthu summons indestructible sand monsters. While He-Man proves otherwise by crushing the threat, the villain turns the sorceress into a diamond and unleashes a maniacal laugh, but the distraction costs him dearly. Man-at-Arms snatches the scarab and He-Man destroys it immediately. The magic is undone, the sorceress returns to normal, and Nepthu reverts to his pathetic state, getting a job as a gardener in the evergreen forest. Mysterious whirlpools are swallowing ships in the seas of Eternia. Man-at-Arms, Adam, and Cringer investigate until their vessel is sucked into a vortex. Adam turns into He-Man just in time to save Man-at-Arms from the wreckage. The group is dragged to Aquatica, an underwater city ruled by Merman. Using the Pearl of Power, the villain has taken mind control of the population. The heroes try to attack, but are brought down by magic and thrown into an arena against the colossal Lorbos. He-Man defeats the creature, and they escape the arena, only to be surrounded by guards. Shellendor, an inhabitant whose magic blocks mind control, helps them and sees the hero as a chance to rescue the true ruler, Princess Nami. He-Man and Man-at-Arms swim to the prison cave and come face to face with a giant monster. Wasting no time, He-Man simply brings the ceiling down on the creature with his usual subtlety. Back in Aquatica, they recover the pearl, and Nami frees her people. Defeated, Merman activates his whirlpool ray to destroy the city. Ignoring the laws of physics, He-Man grabs a protective bar and spins at such an extreme speed that he annihilates the whirlpool, ensuring the end of the underwater threat. Man-at-Arms invents a teleporter. Trapjaw finds out and decides to steal the machine. In the ensuing confrontation, Teela tries to use the device on her own father and accidentally zaps him into the middle of nowhere. Instead of helping himself, a fascinated Man-at-Arms collects rocks until Trapjaw shows up and kidnaps him, taking him to Snake Mountain, where Skeletor peacefully demands new equipment. Meanwhile, Teela decides that a mistake on the job is grounds for resignation and goes into self-imposed exile in the desert with plenty of melodrama. Fortunately, Man-at-Arms fixes a communicator and warns Adam. He-Man saves Teela in the desert, and the two head to the enemy base. There, He-Man ignores the front door and punches a hole through the structure with his bare hands. They rescue Man-at-Arms but discover the teleporter only has enough power for 2 people. Man-at-Arms stays silent while He-Man forces Teela to operate the machine to overcome her trauma. She gets the controls right and returns to the palace with her father. Left behind, He-Man faces Skeletor in a ridiculous tank. The showdown lasts mere seconds. He-Man hangs the tank on a rock, drops a random one-liner, and casually walks away. Trapjaw and Clawful steal the Horn of Evil in Trolla. Driel travels to Eternia to warn Orko, dragging along her younger brother Yuckers, whose entire sense of humor consists of shocking people. Orko flies to Grayskull, where Clawful forces Trapjaw to blow the horn. The dark magic strikes down the sorceress, but Orko shrinks the artifact and flees to the forest. The annoying Yuckers sneezes magic dust on the mage, who ends up captured by Clawful. The rescue turns into a mess. Tila, Driel, He-Man, and Battlecat arrive on the scene. Clawful tries to trap He-Man, but Orko pulls a bizarre arsenal out of his hat. Yuckers shocks Trapjaw, and He-Man hurls Clawful into the swamp along with his vehicle. Everything seems resolved until Yuckers accidentally blows the horn, summoning everything from Cyclops to giant hands amidst a black mist. The sorceress telepathically advises that the solution is to sing the song written on the horn's base. He-Man blows the horn backward, sucking up the dark magic while the Trollins sing. Back at the palace, Orko gifts hats to Driel and Yuckers. The brat puts his on and gets drenched with cold water, experiencing a tasty dose of instant karma. Adam uses Man-at-Arm's new laser to sculpt Orko, catching the attention of Negator, a villain looking for real people to throw into his computer simulator. Negator destroys a dam, and He-Man handles the flood. Disguised as a guard, the villain lures Tila into the desert with fake orders from Adam and kidnaps her. Using her as a hostage, Negator blackmails Man-at-Arms into coming to the desert to work for him. He-Man and Ram-Man go after them. While Ram-Man and Battlecat sneak into the hideout through the vents, He-Man decides the best way to break in is to let himself be swallowed by a cloud with teeth.
This'll take me to Tila and Man-at-Arms.
Tila and Battlecat are neutralized, and Negator drops He-Man and Ram-Man into his game. The problem is that this deadly game is just an incredibly boring and monotonous maze of lackluster traps. Once they find the exit and return to the real world, He-Man blows up Negator's computer through sheer brute force. Without hardware, the villain turns into glowing pink energy and vanishes. Wrapping up the heroic day, Battlecat's only concern upon leaving the hideout is to announce that he's hungry. The Wind Raider's engine dies mid-air, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man to secure the ship to a mountain with a grappling hook. Arriving at the palace, He-Man feels his strength draining. Man-at-Arms discovers that Eternia's oxygen is disappearing. He-Man walks to Grayskull and finds the castle wide open. The sorceress warns him, the water from the Sea of Eternity has been cut off. No water means plants die, and no plants mean goodbye oxygen. Equipped with a respirator, He-Man sets out. He saves the insect people's eggs from an avalanche, prompting the warrior Garth to instantly switch sides and help him. They mop the floor with Beastman and Triclops and find the root of the problem. Skeletor built a dam to drain the sea into an underground pit using a giant machine. During the fight, He-Man's oxygen drops drastically. Garth heroically sacrifices himself to block the water pump, giving He-Man the chance to reverse the machine. Miraculously, the waters resurrect Garth with a new look. Skeletor flees, and He-Man destroys the dam, restoring Eternia's breath of life. A volcano erupts, opening a giant fissure that separates two children from their mother. Adam dismisses Cringer and turns into He-Man. To cross the gap, he ties a vine to his sword and pulls the earth together with brute force to save the kids. In the process, the sword falls into the abyss. He flies down in the Wind Raider and comes face to face with the Rockman Raybar, who refuses to return the weapon. Another Rockman, Togar, joins the fight. A tremor knocks He-Man down, and he barely manages to climb up before the fissure closes, trapping him in this form without his sword. Back at the palace, they grab Ram-Man and Orko to help. Down in the cave, near a bottomless pit, Raybar declares himself leader with the magic weapon. During a scuffle with Ram-Man, Togar accidentally shoots the ceiling. He-Man holds up the weight of the cave-in while the others push a boulder to stabilize everything. The Rock Men decide that weapons are a terrible idea and toss the sword into the pit. Orko, who had caught the sword during its fall, pulls it out of his hat on the surface. At the palace, Tila is utterly frustrated to learn that the prince claims he already received the scolding she couldn't wait to give him. Monteague, an old drinking buddy of Skeletor's, shows up at Snake Mountain bringing historical figures like Blackbeard and General Hannibal for his army. He wants to test He-Man. Pretending to need help against a giant in Poland, Monteague takes He-Man and Orko on his ship, orchestrating completely random tests of strength along the way. Arriving at the giant's cave, He-Man only finds Blackbeard and Hannibal. Like incompetent henchmen, they spill the plan and set a pathetic trap, demanding the hero walk a pirate plank on dry land. Monteague traps He-Man in a magic pit, but the hero escapes in a flash. A bizarre chase ensues in an arena featuring the pirates, the general, and an elephant, while Skeletor shows up just to yell insults. Tired of the circus, He-Man shatters the army's energy dome and sends all the historical figures back to their own eras. Monteague and Skeletor are left bickering and blaming each other, permanently souring their old friendship. David of Abra, a childhood friend of Adam and Tila, is rescued, but with the body and mind of an 8-year-old. The sorceress explains that Count Marzo reverted him to childhood, erased his memory, and stole the Ring of Remembrance, the only way to undo the magic. Man-at-Arms tracks the ring to the Lake of the Lost. While Adam and Tila seek out the artifact, Marzo invades the palace, kidnaps David, and wipes Man-at-Arms' memory. Orko hides in the villain's vehicle.
Who's gonna save him?
Marzo plans to poison the lake to wipe the mind of anyone who dares swim in it. Orko escapes but falls into the lake himself and loses his memory. He-Man drains the entire lake and, using his sword as a magnet, recovers the real ring, restoring Orko. At the fortress, Tila and Orko rescue David but are captured. He-Man arrives just in time and makes Marzo fall into the pool of forgetfulness, where the villain forgets how to be evil. Man-at-Arms regains his memory. David becomes an adult again, and Orko, to top the day off, transforms himself into a giant checkerboard. Kothos attacks the Temple of the Fountain of Life. The wizard Malek calls for help. Adam and Tila head into the desert, while Skeletor sends Evil Lyn and Clawful after the fountain. The situation quickly spirals out of control. Kothos summons a demon, Clawful drags He-Man underground, and Evil Lyn confronts Tila. In the chaos, Kothos steals Evil Lyn's powers, levitates the temple, and teleports the two women to die in the desert. While He-Man solves his problem by hurling Clawful back to Snake Mountain, an unlikely survival alliance forms in the dunes. Tila and Evil Lyn find water together and bury the local beasts under rock slides. The duo infiltrates Kothos' palace in disguise. Evil Lyn regains her powers at the exact moment He-Man arrives and reverses Kothos' spell, turning the sorcerer into a harmless sand slug. Cured by the fountain's water, Evil Lyn surprises everyone. She gives up on stealing the water, announces that Skeletor will have to get it himself, and flies off, the closest Tila will ever get to hearing a thank you from the villainess. Granamir, the oldest dragon in Darksmoke, summons He-Man to be the champion for Torm, a young dragon in love with the human Lyra, whose father demands a test of worth. The bitter rival Zem summons a night demon on the eve of the test, but it is contained. The next day, He-Man enters a maze for the Silver Apple. He ignores Zem's illusions and wins the trial after a friendly tug-of-war against a centaur. Zem tries to steal the apple, but is cornered and humiliated. Refusing to accept defeat, Zem frees Shadowwing, an exiled evil dragon. He-Man jumps into the fight and crashes his vehicle straight into the castle roof. Granamir decides he's had enough of the mess, emerges from his pit, and uses his own magic to banish the evil dragon back to the demon realm. With peace restored, Granamir turns Torm into a human so he can marry Lyra. The old dragon returns to his fire, and He-Man says goodbye, leaving behind yet another cancelled apocalypse in the name of love. The intergalactic hunter known as the Game Master lands on Eternia looking for gladiators. After rejecting Ram Man and Beast Man, he sets his sights on He-Man. He forges a distress call, but the hero wipes the floor with his henchmen and refuses to become a circus attraction. The villain leaves a spy behind, who discovers the affection between He-Man and Tila. Meanwhile, Adam tries to impress girls by riding the robotic horse Stridor, but falls into the fountain. During Tila's lecture, the Game Master appears, neutralizes Adam, kidnaps Tila and the Power Sword, demanding He-Man go alone to the cosmic arena. Adam, Orko, and Cringer set out to the rescue. Adam tries to infiltrate the ship, but is thrown into the arena with Cringer against the giant Kragox. Orko uses magic to free Tila, who recovers the sword, attacks the creature, and ends up knocked out. With Tila unconscious and Orko blinding the monster, Adam finally transforms. He-Man and Battle Cat destroy Kragox. The Game Master refuses defeat and tries to fight, but his own henchmen abandon him, and He-Man ties him up. Tila wakes up surprised by Adam's presence. At Grayskull, He-Man asks who she prefers, and she admits to wanting the courage of one and the intelligence of the other. He-Man and the sorceress share a knowing smile. An urgent summons from the sorceress brings He-Man, Battle Cat, and Orko to Grayskull. The drawbridge slams wildly, and the castle's eyes flash. Inside, harmless ghost monsters try to get their attention. The one responsible is Xanthor, the former guardian of the Golden Discs of Knowledge, banished to the Phantom Dimension for handing the artifacts over to Skeletor. He wants a second chance to fix his mistake. The sorceress is against it, but He-Man convinces her to call Zodak of the Council of Elders. Zodak descends from the heavens, and after He-Man advocates for forgiveness, brings Xanthor back in a ghostly form. The group raids Snake Mountain's vault, but the discs are fake. Skeletor traps everyone in a force field, forgetting that Orko can teleport and Xanthor can walk through walls. Xanthor distracts the villain, while Orko disables the barrier. Freed, He-Man deduces that if Skeletor used the knowledge from the discs to build the mountain, the artifacts must be in its foundation. He smashes the floor, revealing the real discs. Skeletor tries to manipulate Xanthor to no avail. At Grayskull, Zodak takes custody of the discs and hires Xanthor as his assistant. The sorceress receives a distress call from the Solani. Eternia's last unicorn is being targeted by Baron Grodd. Teela wants to solve it by force, but Adam advocates for diplomacy, since hunting isn't a crime. They visit the fortress of Grodd, a fanatic who freezes creatures in time for his collection. The talks fail, and the group warns him they will ask King Randor to outlaw the hunt. Playing dirty, Grodd hires ogres to shoot down the hero's ship. Captured to be sold as slaves, they are saved when Teela kicks over a cauldron, allowing Cringer to retrieve the power sword. Adam transforms, neutralizes the ogres, and rescues Teela, blocking off the cave. Meanwhile, Grodd tracks the unicorn. The Solani fairies try to delay him, but he attacks them and captures the animal. He-Man frees the fairies, but the hunter escapes. Retaliation is swift. The heroes storm the fortress. Battlecat shreds Grodd's robotic dog, and He-Man breaks his weapon. Desperate, the Baron unfreezes a tentacled monster that restrains He-Man. As he tries to release another beast, the fairies deflect the beam, freeing a predator that begins hunting the Baron himself. He-Man breaks free, and Teela freezes the animal milliseconds before its lethal strike. Feeling the sheer terror of being the prey, Grodd frees his collection. At the palace, Randor officially bans sport hunting. Adam and Man-at-Arms finally pass the web line test, but Teela brings terrible news. Rohad, Man-at-Arms' old mentor, is gravely ill after being bitten by a mysterious insect in the tundra caves. The sorceress reveals that the only cure is the Vimward plant from the top of Mount Zalite. Adam turns into He-Man and takes off in the Wind Raider. The journey becomes a test of survival. The ship is ambushed by a tack drill and brought down by a twister. On foot, He-Man crosses a jungle, neutralizes a giant octopus with the web line, and survives a river whirlpool. In the icy mountains, he encounters the same tack drill as before, now trapped in a Crybon's web. The hero frees the creature and continues his climb. Karma acts fast. When He-Man slips off a cliff, the tack drill saves him and takes him to the sacred cave. There, the spirit of Mount Zalite demands that He-Man beg for the herb. He swallows his pride immediately, proving that a life is worth more than ego. With the antidote, he saves Rohad. He-Man apologizes for losing the equipment, but Man-at-Arms reminds him that inventions can be rebuilt, but friends cannot. In the birch forest, the team is looking for rare plants. During a storm, Orko bumps his head on a tree, passes out, and is scooped up by giant hands. When the rain stops and Adam and Man-at-Arms start to panic, the giant reappears, returns an unharmed Orko along with the plants, and leaves. Adam turns into He-Man to investigate. Meanwhile, the villainous Keeper tries to capture the giant for his flying zoo. He lassos the big guy with his airship's tractor beam. He-Man tries to hold the beam back with brute force, but the villain plays dirty and captures Orko as well, forcing the hero to let them go. To distract He-Man, the Keeper unleashes a monstrous scorpion. True to his peaceful style, the hero simply reroutes a river to wash the creature away. In the ship's cells, the giant reveals his name is Cambro, a brilliant man isolated by prejudice. Orko flattens himself to slip through the bars, and Cambro turns the intercom into a radio to warn that the ship is going to attack Stratos in Avion. He-Man arrives in time to prevent the capture. Using his winged friend as a catapult, he tears through the airship's fuselage and frees the prisoners. The Keeper panics as he is surrounded by his own beasts, but Cambro calms them down. Impressed, Man-at-Arms hires the giant as his assistant. On an expedition, Adam and Malaktha discover the Temple of the Cat, confirming the myth of the catfolk, all while a feline spy watches them. Malaktha triggers a crushing wall trap, and Adam calls upon the power of Grayskull at the very last second to save him. He-Man disables the rest of the traps and recovers the legendary statue of Grimalkin. The artifact draws attention at the palace. The king of the catfolk sends Agent Katrina to retrieve it, it, while Skeletor dispatches Webstore to steal it. The vault turns into a chaotic night scene. Katrina and Teela fight, allowing Webstore to escape with the piece in a Wind Raider. Katrina then reveals that the statue is a prison for a demon. Teela and the feline team up and head to Snake Mountain. There, Skeletor subdues He-Man and Battle Cat. The feline breaks free, bumps into Katrina, and together they free the hero. Too late, Skeletor breaks the seal and unleashes Grimalkin. Terrified by the creature's power, the villain flees. The uncontrollable demon tears the mountain apart. Guided by Katrina's legends, He-Man uses the power sword to channel lightning from a storm, turning the beast back to stone. Peace is forged between humans and the catfolk, and Katrina ends up hitting on Battle Cat, leaving him completely flustered. Orko messes with Man-at-Arm's new Road Ripper vehicle and crashes straight into the throne room, where Randor is preparing for He-Man Day. Feeling inadequate because he never gets a holiday, Orko gets depressed. A tremor unearths a temple on Mount Eternia. The team investigates, but Teela backs off after reading warnings about absolute power. Skeletor tries to break in, but the magic repels him. Orko, on the other hand, driven by his crisis of confidence, enters easily. He frees a trapped creature in exchange for wishes, but the beast grows and breaks its promise instantly. The energy beast attacks, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man, and then flees to another dimension to recharge. The sorceress explains that the monster can only be controlled by the Eternian crystal, hidden in the Chamber of Gold. Skeletor's Raven hears everything, and the race is on. Using a drill rocket, the heroes find the crystal, but the villain shows up to steal it. The beast returns, and Skeletor tries to propose an alliance. He-Man's response is to throw the villain into a lake. Crystal in hand, He-Man digs a hole straight to the planet's core and tosses the stone in. The beast dives after it and ends up sealed away forever. In the end, He-Man declines his holiday and asks Randor to honor Orko and the team instead. A rocket prototype built by Man-at-Arms loses control and explodes in the royal quarters. Devastated, he decides to resign, and Adam and Teela must convince him not to give up. Watching it all unfold, Skeletor decides to make things worse. He uses a shrink ray to turn a beast into a living malware called Bite, and sends it into Man-at-Arms' computer. The palace machines go haywire. A ship attacks Teela and Man-at-Arms, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man to bring it down. Riddled with guilt, Man-at-Arms uses a shrink ray to physically enter the circuits, but he runs face to face into Bite and gets trapped in the memory grid. Teela confirms Skeletor's involvement. Unaware of Man-at-Arms' whereabouts, He-Man turns to the sorceress, who shrinks him down in the form of Zoar the Falcon to infiltrate the system. In the digital world, He-Man frees the scientist, and together, they beat the virus to a pulp. Instead of deleting it, He-Man redirects Bite to Snake Mountain, destroying Skeletor's computers. Man-at-Arms finally learns that giving up at the first sign of failure is not the answer. King Randor loses a chess match to a visitor, Lord Todd, when Orko bumps into the board. Pure charm, Todd invites Teela to visit his star castle. Ignoring Adam and Man-at-Arms' warnings about the Lord's obviously sketchy vibe, she accepts. Meanwhile, Orko and Cringer stumble upon a giant mole monster. Adam turns into He-Man to stop it, but telepathically discovers that the creature, Moak, isn't evil. He just has terrible eyesight and causes destruction by accident. At the Star Castle, Todd reveals himself to be a fanatical collector. He shows Teela an indestructible Eternia maze and a life-size chessboard featuring kidnapped living beings, demanding that she be his queen. Man-at-Arms tries to rescue her, but both are cornered. He-Man arrives, smashing through the robots, but can't cut through the maze in time. He convinces Moak to dig underneath the structure. The plan works, but during their escape, Todd's star portal sucks Teela in. Using brute force, He-Man holds the dimensional rift open, while Man-at-Arms pulls her back. The portal closes, banishing Todd and erasing the castle. Moak is declared a hero of Eternia, and finally gets a giant pair of glasses. After saving a boy from a monster, Fisto shows some humility, and decides to tell his own tale of redemption. Years earlier, he was a bully who dammed up the river of the village of Yarrow, backed by Skeletor, who had imprisoned an elf lord to give Fisto control over the forest. When Yarrow's daughter sought help at the palace. Adam, Tila, and Cringer went to investigate. They discovered that Fisto and his giant spider, Arachna, had captured Hiro. The villain trapped Tila in a web and tried to crush her with a tree, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man. Fisto fled to his hideout, brought the trees to life, and flooded the hero's cave. The plan was perfect until he himself got pinned by a log. Hiro's daughter escaped the water and freed him, giving him a harsh reality check. Fisto turned against Skeletor and helped the heroes. Since the villain had supercharged his spider, Fisto catapulted He-Man over the forest. The hero freed the Elf Lord, breaking all the enemy's magic. In the present, He-Man confirms that the king has pardoned Fisto. When the former villain offers the boy a hand, He-Man jokes about the literal weight of the offer. The palace is preparing for Randor and Marlena's wedding anniversary party. Desperate to find the perfect gift, Orko decides to help and causes absolute chaos. He sets off fireworks in Man-at-Arms' workshop and ruins Tila's kitchen, forcing Adam to turn into He-Man twice just to put out fires and clean up the mess. Feeling useless, Orko runs away with Cringer to vent at Grayskull. The team finds his goodbye letter and heads into the forest. On the way, Orko runs into the Talgoth, an energy-draining monster, but manages to flee to the castle. The sorceress offers him advice, but he realizes his friends might cross paths with the beast. Sure enough, He-Man, Tila, and Man-at-Arms lose their strength to the Talgoth and can barely defend themselves against shadow beasts. Orko arrives just in time and offers himself as bait, letting the monster drain his magic to spare the group. The sacrifice works. With their strength restored, the team defeats the creature. Back at the palace, Orko laments not having a material gift, but everyone assures him that his presence is already the best gift possible. All the books in Eternia disappear overnight, causing King Randor to panic. While Adam and Man-at-Arms seek answers at Grayskull, Tila and Orko follow a trail of dropped books to the Temple of the Sun. The thief is Batros, who intends to monopolize reading to force Randor to abdicate. Thinking the idea is pure genius, Skeletor sends Beastman and Trapjaw to recruit the new villain. Batros captures Tila and Orko, refuses to take orders from the henchmen, beats them up, and goes to negotiate directly at Snake Mountain. This opening allows Tila to knock out Trapjaw and recover the book Orko intended to give Adam for his birthday.
It's my unicorn book. Come on, let's get out of here.
The villainous deal is struck. Batros gets Eternia in exchange for helping Skeletor invade Grayskull. Batros creates a magical backdoor bridge, but He-Man intercepts them. Skeletor flees, and Batros destroys the bridge to drop the hero. He-Man grabs onto the stone, swings back up, and hurls the villain to the dark side of the planet. The books vanish again, and He-Man realizes Skeletor stole the idea. He storms Snake Mountain, lets himself be captured to find the stash by listening to the villain brag, breaks free effortlessly, and sends Skeletor packing. Knowledge and Adam's birthday are safe. Adam's rest is interrupted when Man-at-Arms tests Stridor, a robotic horse that neighs when it senses danger. Instantly, the beast shrieks, and a meteor shower strikes the palace, forcing Adam to become He-Man to neutralize the threat. The sorceress summons the hero to Grayskull, and he rides Stridor there. She reveals the attack was by Morgoth, an immortal sorcerer who escaped his dimension. To face him at the Dark Mountain, the sorceress uses the Crystal of Alinar to maintain her human form outside the castle. On the way, she shares her past. Before becoming the Guardian, she was Tila Na, whose village was invaded by Morgoth. Guided by a prophecy, she found Grayskull, took up the mantle from the former sorceress Kuduk Umgol, and banished the villain. Morgoth reappears, planting a gem in the ground to create a force field that repels living matter. He-Man is blocked, but Stridor, being a machine, passes through the shield. The horse takes a severe beating from the villain but manages to kick the gem out. Furious at seeing the robot destroyed, He-Man snaps the gem in half and banishes Morgoth once again. At the palace, Man-at-Arms repairs Stridor and discovers the machine has gained sentience. He-Man and Man-at-Arms release him into the wild. During the inauguration of King Randor's massive dam, Tila complains about the environmental impact, but Adam needs to investigate the disappearance of ships near an uncharted volcanic island. Adam, Man-at-Arms, and Cringer take off in the Wind Raider, but the ship is bizarrely sucked toward the island and crashes. Adam turns into He-Man just to save the group from the current and then changes back. On the island, they find an ironic "Hello Chump" sign and fall straight into an underground lake where Adam loses his sword. Captured alongside the stolen ships, they are confronted by Skeletor, Merman, and Whiplash. The villain's megalomaniacal plan is to use the island as a giant vehicle to ram into the dam and flood the kingdom. Meanwhile, Teela, Buzz-Off, and Orko find the lost sword and an access tunnel. The group infiltrates the base, rescues the hostages, and hands the weapon back to Adam seconds before the collision. He-Man emerges, wrecks the henchman, and destroys the base's main engine. As the island collapses, Skeletor flees, tying up and dragging his own allies behind him. In the end, the floating island is towed away and turned into a new environmental reserve, making up for the area lost to the dam. Whiplash crashes a palace party begging King Randor for help. The desperation is real. Skeletor summons Shigora, an untamable interdimensional demon who subdued the villain, Evil Lyn, and Trapjaw, and now wants to devour Eternia. Zoar confirms the story. Adam turns into He-Man, and the team follows Whiplash through Snake Mountain's secret passages to forge an unlikely alliance with the enemy. Shigora has already invaded Grayskull, turning the sorceress into its puppet. The coalition of good and evil storms the castle. While He-Man blocks attacks directed at the sorceress, Evil Lyn uses her magic to free her. Deep below, Shigora opens a portal to swallow Eternia. Everyone attacks the monster, while Skeletor, Evil Lyn, and the sorceress prepare the banishing spell. The spell works, but Shigora grabs He-Man as it is sucked in. Showing his cowardly nature, Skeletor betrays the group, raising a wall of fire to ensure the hero's death, and runs off to plunder the castle's secrets. Fortunately, a blast from Orko breaks the demon's grip and saves He-Man. The sorceress teleports him to intercept the villains. When they attack, He-Man simply steps aside, making the henchman fall straight into a portal back to Snake Mountain. The guard Philip slips up when he gets distracted by Orko, allowing Whiplash to try and steal an Ice Raider. Trying to cover up his mistake, Philip doesn't call for backup, takes a beating, and leaves it to He-Man to dispatch the villain. King Randor doesn't forgive the failure, and transfers the guard to the North Pole weather station. Spotting the opening, Skeletor sends his henchman Icer to invade the base, since the Ice Raider can bypass the shields. Up north, Philip ignores Man-at-Arms' protocols, and Icer infiltrates the base as a puddle of water. The villain freezes the station, tosses Philip into the snow, and launches a lethal glacier straight toward the palace. Adam, Teela, Orko, and Cringer set out for the rescue. Blocked by trolls, Adam turns into He-Man and flattens the creatures with a giant snowball. At the station, chaos reigns. Teela is frozen solid, and Orko wakes up the subterranean monster, Caterchiller. He-Man puts the beast to sleep, unfreezes Teela, and uses the power sword to pierce the ground. The heat from Eternia's core turns the place into a sauna, melting Icer and sending him packing. Philip finally takes responsibility, and Teela, furious about Adam's disappearance, confesses to Man-at-Arms that she has feelings for the prince. Yet another of Orko's failed tricks makes an entire room vanish. The crisis is interrupted when Driel arrives from Trolla with the news that Uncle Montork lost his position as head of the Academy of Magic to a newcomer named Snoob. Cringer refuses to go through the portal, so He-Man and Battlecat take the mission. On Trolla, they discover that Montork only lost because his powers were drained during the duel. Orko and Driel catch Snoob teaching magic to Whiplash, revealing the fraud. Skeletor's henchmen sabotaged Montork to install an easily manipulated leader and gain power. Whiplash captures the two mages, forcing He-Man and Montork to storm the enemy stronghold. In desperation, the villain unleashes the giant monster Scarred. Since individual magic fails, Montork coordinates a joint magical strike that shrinks the creature. With the path clear, He-Man and the mages beat up Whiplash and lock him in a chest bound for Eternia. Snoob repents for his corruption, and Orko forgives the rookie just in time to celebrate with a feast. In the floating city of Avion, Hawk offers to check the force field generator. Soon after, Skeletor attacks the unprotected city. Upon investigating, Stratos discovers the sabotage, but Hawk pins the blame on him, and the population believes her. Banished, Stratos risks losing his wings if he stays away from the egg of Avion. Exiled, he is attacked by a giant Carrack in the forest, but Adam and Orko happen to be passing by. He-Man steps in and breaks up the fight by feeding the beast giant fruit. Without Stratos, Avion falls. Skeletor steals the egg, and Hawk vanishes along with it. The sorceress tracks the egg to the demon zone, Whiplash's domain. He-Man busts down the gates, but Orko gets left outside and is saved from a giant snake by the very same Carrack from earlier. Inside, He-Man and Stratos defeat Whiplash and find Hawk locked in a cage. Betrayed by Skeletor after helping him, she received instant karma. He-Man gives her a second chance, recovers the egg, and seals the portal, locking away the demons. Back in Avion, Stratos vouches for Hawk, proving himself a hero above the hasty judgment of his people. Adam's board game is interrupted by Zoar. The ancient dragon Granomir has summoned He-Man. In Dark Smoke, while Orko stirs up trouble with a bottled monster, Granomir explains that dragons are disappearing without a magical trace and asks He-Man to investigate. The hero soon spots Cobra Khan and Webstor using a teleporter to kidnap the beasts, after subduing Mekaneck and Buzzoff. During the rescue, Orko breaks the machine, sending everyone to the dimension of Marrow. The planet is in ruins, and its last inhabitants, the Dharmi, host gladiator fights, trading the dragons for weapons with Khan. To save the animals peacefully, He-Man faces the giant robot Bellatron in the arena. The hero almost loses when his energy is drained, but Granomir and Orko fix the machine and arrive just in time. Recovered, He-Man obliterates the robot. When the Dharmi protest, the dragon turns them to stone, while He-Man crushes Khan's escape ship. Granomir wants to force the Dharmi to fight as punishment, but He-Man convinces him not to stoop to their level. The dragon spares the natives, destroys the arena, and, back in Dark Smoke, rewards Orko with the same bottled monster from the beginning. Teela and Man-E-Face's theatrical rehearsal is so intense that Ram Man thinks his friend has actually turned into a real monster. He destroys the set, and the misunderstanding sparks a fight that breaks the two's friendship. A runaway enemy ship threatens the palace, and Adam turns into He-Man to divert it. Inside, they find Beast-Man tied up. Man-E-Faces assumes the villain's face as a disguise and intercepts a call from Skeletor. The ship takes them to the Dark Moon, where they uncover the war plan. The Dark Moon will attack the Bright Moon because Evil Lyn, in disguise, sabotaged the Solar Mirrors project. Undercover, Man-E-Faces is about to figure everything out when the real Beast-Man escapes from prison and shows up. The disguise falls apart, and the hero takes a beating. Swallowing his pride, Ram Man throws himself into the enemy base to save his former friend. Adam summons He-Man, and a massive brawl breaks out. Skeletor and Trapjaw try to fire a giant cannon at the Bright Moon, but the hero dismantles the weapon using brute force. In the end, a space peace treaty is signed, and Ram Man and Man-E-Faces rekindle their friendship after taking a beating from Skeletor together. Eternia receives visitors from beyond. Man-at-Arms intercepts the signal of Ohm, an ancient alien entity of pure energy interested in studying intelligent life. King Randor organizes an official welcoming event. At Snake Mountain, Skeletor has zero interest in making new friends and hires goblins led by General Tataran to kidnap the royal family. At night, Ohm arrives and is fascinated by Orko. The reception is brutally interrupted by the invasion of Skeletor's troops, and chaos takes over the diplomatic event. Considering a war a waste of energy, Ohm simply freezes everyone. Taking on the role of a space referee, he selects the two greatest warriors from each side for a duel and teleports He-Man and Skeletor to an isolated plane. He-Man proposes a peaceful way out, but Skeletor answers with magic. The fight is intense, and the brute force of the power sword shatters the mystical barriers. Frustrated, the villain conjures a giant insectoid monster. He-Man dodges every strike. Irritated, Skeletor insults his own creature and increases its size, demanding results. The monster turns against its creator. With his magic depleted, Skeletor is cornered by the beast. He-Man steps in, subdues the monster, and saves the life of his greatest enemy. Ohm ends the fight, confused. When He-Man explains that all life has value, the alien is impressed. He unfreezes the troops, sends the goblins away, and wipes everyone's memory of the invasion, making it clear that compassion was the true strength. Orko, of course, takes the opportunity to brag, claiming he would have wiped the floor with Skeletor if Ohm had chosen him. Teela and Orko visit the field fields of Agar, Eternia's master farmer. On their way back, they decide to pick some corn for dinner. Without warning, the ground opens up and swallows the crops, dragging Tila into the depths. She falls into a colossal cave ruled by the Balots, the subterranean race responsible for the greatest corn heist in history. He-Man and Battle Cat head down the tunnels to rescue her and meet the king of the Balots, Subternius. Tila tries diplomacy, but he holds a massive grudge. In the past, Skeletor tricked and enslaved his people. Now Subternius thinks everyone from the surface is the same and plans to steal all of Eternia's food to prevent them from being enslaved again. While the heroes fight on the surface against armies of harvester machines, He-Man shuts down the central battery powering everything. Subternius takes Garda, Agar's son, hostage and threatens to flood the fields. With the peculiar courage of children, the boy confronts the king, putting his foot down that his father is an honest farmer. The reality check works. Subternius realizes his blind prejudice and backs down. He-Man blocks the flood by pushing giant boulders. The crisis ends with the Balots agreeing to help the farmers recover the lost harvest. Following a skirmish at the Widget Fortress, Tila returns to her favorite pastime, picking on Adam. The prince is exhausted from splitting his life between royal duties and heroism, but she sees it as laziness. Man-at-Arms suggests mixing training with fun, resulting in a picnic and a game of hide-and-seek in the evergreen forest. Tila gets distracted by a cute little creature she names Pookie. Following the animal to the edge of the abyss at Castle Grayskull, the ground gives way beneath them and both plunge into the darkness. She wakes up on a rocky ledge with a broken arm. On the surface, Adam finds no trace of her. Tila sends an emergency signal through her communicator. Man-at-Arms and Adam track the location, and the sorceress uses telepathy to confirm that Tila is still alive down below. Adam turns into He-Man and climbs down for the rescue. While Tila watches the magic of Grayskull flowing through the walls, the team finally reaches her. Safe and sound, Tila confesses she felt a strong maternal presence watching over her in the abyss. High above, the sorceress smiles silently, adding emotional weight to their secret connection. Direct from Snake Mountain, Skeletor plots to kidnap Queen Marlena to lure out He-Man. The invasion strikes during lunch. Cobra Khan releases sleeping gas into the dining hall, knocking everyone out. Cringer, who had gone to check on the queen, cowers under the bed, allowing the villains to abduct Marlena without a fight. The henchmen split up. Cobra Khan and Merman drag the queen through the haunted forest, while Whiplash and Clawful lay down a decoy trail. Prince Adam awakens, transforms into He-Man, and sets off with Tila and Man-at-Arms in the Dragon Walker, following the false lead. Plagued by a guilty conscience, Cringer's keen sense of smell picks up the true trail. Alongside Orko, he braves the haunted forest. The journey descends into pure chaos. They plummet from a collapsed bridge, tumble down a waterfall, and flee from aquatic monsters until they stumble upon a tunnel leading straight to the enemy base. Once inside, Orko uses his magic to free Marlena. However, someone needs to stall Skeletor and his robotic falcon, Screech. In a surprising twist, Cringer volunteers. Orko hands him a magic amulet of courage, which is essentially just a placebo. Incredibly, it works. Brimming with newfound confidence, Cringer leaps onto the robotic bird's back just as it takes off to ambush He-Man. Skeletor attempts to switch to manual control, but the tiger's impromptu rodeo causes a short circuit, sending the bird crashing down. He-Man and his squad arrive moments later and wipe the floor with the villains. Back at the palace, King Randor decorates Cringer with a medal. When the tiger credits the amulet for his bravery, Orko admits that the magic was fake and his courage was real. But the fearless hero persona is short-lived. A butterfly lands on his nose, and the tiger flees in sheer panic. Tired of Beastman and Trapjaw's incompetence, Skeletor realizes that capturing Eternia's royal guard is a much more efficient plan. During a flight training session, Tila loses and walks away frustrated. Queen Marlena, missing her astronaut days, suggests the Immelmann turn, but Tila ignores the advice. Marlena turns down a beach picnic with King Randor to admire her old spaceship, the Rainbow Explorer. During the picnic, Skeletor shows up with his fleet and freezes Randor, Tila, Man-at-Arms, and Adam before the prince can draw his sword. The palace receives an ultimatum. The queen suits up in her old gear, powers up the Rainbow Explorer, and leads a surgical preemptive strike against Skeletor's fleet. Marlena blasts Adam's shackles. Using the distraction, he escapes, turns into He-Man, steals an enemy ship, and blows up the main transport. Skeletor tries to shoot Marlena down, but she pulls off the Immelmann turn, dodges the attack, and shoots the villain down, sending him fleeing in terror. The next day, Tila swallows her pride and practices the flight maneuver. Adam questions why his mother focused on his shackles during the attack. Marlena smiles and says that a mother always knows her own son, proving for sure that she knows his secret. King Boreas of Morania, a frozen kingdom, creates an energy crystal 10 times more powerful than normal. Adam, Orko, and Cringer are sent to retrieve it. Skeletor spies on them and causes the hero's vehicle to fall into an ice crevasse. Down there, Adam and Cringer assume their heroic forms and use brute force to escape a giant ice spider. In Morania, they meet Boreas's children, the arrogant Prince Esker and the intelligent Princess Janice, who is ignored by her brother. Skeletor invades the kingdom, deflects Boreas's hypnotic magic, kidnaps him, and locks him in the Cave of Mirrors. With the king missing, the spoiled Esker panics. Skeletor demands the crystals and the formula. Janice has a rescue plan, but her brother rejects it. Fed up, she takes a snowmobile and goes alone. Clawful goes after her, but He-Man and Battle Cat save her. Unlike her brother, He-Man listens to Janice's plan. Together, they storm the mines of Crystal Mountain, rescue Boreas, and stop Skeletor from stealing the energy. In the end, Esker swallows his pride and promises to listen to his sister. On King Randor's birthday, Orko botches a magic trick and, embarrassed, hides in the Stratoblaster, the king's surprise present. He accidentally starts the ship and takes off out of control. Tila and Man-at-Arms give chase, while Adam turns into He-Man. The ship crashes into a junkyard at Snake Mountain. Skeletor sends Evil Lyn, Clawful, and a cowardly recruit named Glitch to attack. He-Man arrives just in time and chases the gang away. Skeletor tests his henchmen by forcing them to walk over a chasm. Glitch panics. Losing his patience, Skeletor throws the boy into the enchanted forest. Adam and Cringer find the terrified boy. Glitch reveals he is the Prince of Silesia, who ran away to overcome his fear. Adam takes him back to the forest to build his confidence. Through his monitor, Skeletor watches and animates the local plants to attack the trio. Adam is knocked out before he can draw his sword. Glitch swallows his fear and runs off alone for help, acting like a hero. Cringer wakes Adam up, who summons the power of Grayskull and destroys the killer plants. King Salus arrives in a colossal stone ship looking for his son. Skeletor lies, claiming Randor kidnapped him, then seizes control of the ship, taking Salus hostage. Glitch steals Skeletor's magic staff, creating the perfect distraction for He-Man to hurl the villain far away. Salus returns home with a braver son, and Adam makes it back just in time for lunch. Tila takes some students to the Mystic Forest, unaware that the palace radio is broken thanks to Orko. Man-at-Arms needs rainbow quartz from Snake Mountain to fix it, so Adam and Cringer go on a stealth mission. In the forest, the students take Tila's vehicle and drive to the enemy base. Without a radio, Tila can't call for backup. Skeletor sends Evil Lyn to capture Tila to demand the secrets of Grayskull as a ransom. While the students flee from monsters, Adam bumps into Merman and turns into He-Man. Showing rare pragmatism, Skeletor meets He-Man and offers the stones in exchange for peace. But Evil Lyn announces over the loudspeakers that Tila has escaped, ruining the negotiation. He-Man tracks the group down, reverses Trapjaw's trap using Battle Cat's roar, and corners the villains. He deflects a spell from Evil Lyn, puts Tila and the kids in an enemy ship, and ensures their safe escape. To top it off, he yanks out the quartz to fix the radio, only for Orko to nearly blow it up again. To cheer up Prince Dal, Orko makes up a lie that an ordinary gem is the mystical star crystal, capable of protecting its bearer. Believing him, Dal walks straight into a waterfall to test it. To keep the lie going, Orko magically diverts the river. The water floods the palace, forcing He-Man to save the nearby children.
The water can harmlessly find its way back to the river now.
Instead of taking the blame, Orko keeps up the lie. Feeling confident, Dal steals the stone and sets off to help his father in a war against the Torks. The rescue mission derails when Orko lies again and sends He-Man and Tila into the wrong caves. Tila is mummified by giant spiders and is barely saved before the whole group passes out from the Torks' sleeping gas. On the battlefield, King Stefan faces hordes alone, betting everything on the useless stone. He-Man arrives at the last second, clears the field, and collapses the cave entrance, burying the threat. After nearly causing a disaster, Orko finally admits that lying was a terrible strategy. Space pirates led by Sticky Fingers take over a village and confiscate their food. A girl named Rose escapes and finds Adam and Tila exploring nearby ruins. When they sneak into the village to free the people, the plan falls apart. In the middle of the brawl, battle, Adam gets separated from the Sword of Power. He and Tila are covered in tar slime and thrown into a cell. With help from Rose and her father, they escape through a secret tunnel and throw a sniffer monster off their scent using sacks of spices. Adam convinces the villagers to fight back using creative traps and gives Cringer the worst mission possible: retrieve the sword. Cringer gives the whole plan away. In a moment of bravery, he snatches the sword from the pirate leader and tosses it back to Adam. With He-Man back, the tar slime is useless against the power of Grayskull. When the pirates try to flee, He-Man chains their ship to the ground. Man-at-Arms arrives with the cavalry moments later, only to find that the villagers themselves had already handled the problem. Tila tests the Wind Raider's thrusters, supercharged with Widget Corrodite. On the beach, Adam and his allies celebrate. Underwater, Merman and Trapjaw are testing robotic sea monsters. They attack the boat of a grumpy fisherman named Jacob. Adam turns into He-Man, destroys the robots, and saves the man. Far from being grateful, Jacob just complains, hating the company. Still, the Widgets insist on taking him to their fort. Merman kidnaps a Widget, discovers the Corrodite mine, and digs a tunnel from the sea straight into it, threatening to drown the fort if they don't hand over the ore. When Tila shows up, Jacob uses his new fishing rod to hook Merman, creating an opening for Tila to pin him down. But the tide keeps rising. Adam and Cringer see the distress signal and transform. He-Man easily throws Merman out, but to save the fort, he pulls off something absurd. He flies the Wind Raider into space and pushes one of Eternia's moons to alter the gravity and force the tide back. After putting the moon back in place, Jacob finally says thank you for the help, gives up his isolated life, and ends up being elected mayor of the Widgets. After a storm hits the Widget fort, Squinch wishes he were He-Man's size and decides to ask Skeletor for it. Skeletor orders his men to lock the boy up, but Evil Lyn hands him a small box, claiming it's a gift for He-Man, promising him the growth spell in exchange for delivering it. Squinch fires the signal, and He-Man appears. The box releases a magic powder that instantly knocks out the hero and Battle Cat. Skeletor and his gang kidnap both of them. Full of regret, the Widget confesses at the palace. Tila and Orko sneak into Snake Mountain, but Evil Lyn immobilizes them. Meanwhile, Skeletor invades the palace, chains King Randor, and sits on the throne. In the prison, Evil Lyn misses a shot and blasts a hole in He-Man's cage. Trying to fix her blunder of letting Squinch slip through the hole, she turns him into a giant. Frustrated, Squinch begs Orko to shrink him back, slips into the cage, and frees He-Man. The heroes are teleported to the palace and find the henchmen in the kitchen, managing to bake the villains inside a giant loaf of bread. He-Man throws the colossal bakery treat back to Snake Mountain, and Squinch realizes that being small saved the day. The temple's sunstone needs an urgent recharge. He-Man and his allies cut across the sands of time in the attack track for the ceremony. On the way, Orko opens a giant glass bottle, freeing a blue dwarf and his robot.
Yeah, that was great. That was perfect. It was your...
The guy refuses to say his name so he won't be banished back to his home dimension, introducing himself as Prankster. His practical jokes annoy the entire group. Negator watches everything, planning to steal the stone's energy. He intercepts Prankster's jokes and turns everything into giant monsters. He-Man deals with the creatures using brute force and gives the Prankster an ultimatum. At the temple, the roof opens so the sun can charge the stone. Negator breaks in, absorbs the solar energy, grows to a giant size, and raises a force field. Mocking the situation, Prankster conjures rain clouds. Without the sun, the stone sucks the energy back out, and Negator shrinks, freaking out and turning the clouds into a lethal storm. He-Man dives into the hurricane and uses the Sword of Power as a lightning rod to save the stone. At the palace, Adam makes up a holiday for Prankster. When the robot tries to register the official name, the little dwarf himself panics and shouts his real name, Wokrapanaki. The magic rule kicks in and he is sucked back to his dimension. On the search for the mythical city of stone, the vehicle's computer agrees with one of Orko's routes. The wizard wakes up a tree that hurls underground trash at them, revealing the exact map they needed. Evil Lyn, Cobra Khan, and Webstore steal the map and trap the heroes under heavy stone slabs. Adam's sword gets stuck. Adam orders the vehicle to use its shovel to lever the weapon, managing to pull the sword free and turn into He-Man. At the City of Stone, Evil Lyn teleports a sophisticated machine to Snake Mountain. Vokan, the king of the city, awakens. He explains that his people went into a stone sleep and need that machine to wake everyone up. Evil Lyn lies, saying He-Man hidden in Castle Grayskull. Vokan attacks Grayskull. The battle is intense, but the truth comes out. Evil Lyn threatens to destroy the machine and flees. At the base, Skeletor shows up totally confused and simply hands the machine over to He-Man, not wanting a fight. Back at the city, the machine is installed, but the moon has drifted out of alignment. He-Man's solution? He pushes the entire mountain to align the lens. The people wake up and decide to live in seclusion, and Evil Lyn ends up carving a giant statue of Skeletor as punishment. Orko tries to use magic to help Stanlin, archaeologist Malaktha's apprentice, but turns a statue to dust, revealing an ancient map. They take the map to the sorceress. Beastman spies on them using a little creature, and overhears that the map leads to the spell book of the ancients in the Temple of the Wolf. Skeletor ambushes Teela and Malaktha in the Caves of the Wind, traps them in a net, and implies that Stanlin is a traitor. Adam turns into He-Man, but Skeletor steals the map, kidnaps Stanlin, and collapses the cave. With no time for games, He-Man spins like a human drill, bores his way through the rocks, and leads the rescue toward the temple. Inside, Skeletor tries to use magic but ends up conjuring a wolf that starts hunting him and Beastman. Stanlin recovers the book. The villain attempts a final strike, but He-Man shows up hurling boulders. Malaktha restores his trust in his apprentice, and Stanlin concludes that he never should have accepted Orko's help in the first place. In the royal lab, Orko creates a bizarre demon while trying to brew a courage potion for Cringer. Man-at-Arms and Adam intervene, and Man-at-Arms decides to tell a story to illustrate why rules matter. In the past, young Prince Adam used a sound simulator to scare off a predator and saved a cowardly tiger cub. Teela nicknamed him Cringer, and the sorceress telepathically warned Adam to be patient, as the animal would be essential. Years later, on an expedition, Adam and Teela disobeyed orders, forced an ancient door open, and unleashed the colossal monster Gedge. While the guards fought, Adam slipped away to become He-Man. Cringer followed him, and when the hero pointed his sword, an accidental lightning bolt struck the cowardly tiger, transforming him into Battle Cat. The two cornered the Gedge and sealed the door with explosives. Back in the present, Man-at-Arms reinforces the lesson that disobedience almost cost them dearly. However, Cringer points out that without that mistake, he would never have become Battle Cat, and Adam agrees that He-Man's life would be pretty lonely without his friend. While exploring a canyon, He-Man and Orko stumble upon an ancient laboratory belonging to the Silkon civilization. The little wizard finds a golden wheel, turns the crank, and brings Tamask, an ancient barbarian sorcerer king from the past. Tamask concludes that Randor has usurped his throne, locks He-Man and Orko up, and marches to the palace to reclaim his crown. He-Man punches his way out and goes after him. When caught, Tamask ignores explanations, conjures a giant centipede to attack them, and keeps going. At the palace, Tamask makes his demands and Randor tries to lecture him on morality. He-Man arrives just in time, and a chase through the palace ensues, with the ancient king laying traps everywhere. The stubbornness ends when Tamask falls into his own trap and is saved by He-Man. Finally willing to listen, the ancient king understands the situation. He-Man uses the time wheel to send him back to his era, and the Silkon lab explodes, ensuring no one else travels through time. A stroll through the market turns into a mission when Man-at-Arms finds a bracelet belonging to the missing King Miro, Randor's father. They set off for the Swamps of Enchantment. Worried, Queen Marlena asks Adam and Cringer to follow them. In record time, Man-at-Arms' incompetence gets Randor kidnapped by the Enchantress. Adam parachutes from the Wind Raider right into the water. As He-Man and Battle Cat, they find Man-at-Arms and discover that Randor is held captive on the floating Lost Mountain. He-Man bends a giant tree, uses it as a catapult, and launches himself onto the mountain. At the top, he rescues King Miro, who warns that Randor is in the Castle of Fear down on the ground. He-Man and Miro leap off the mountain, grab Man-at-Arms and Battle Cat, and storm the castle. The Enchantress throws monsters at the group, but she doesn't stand a chance, and the threat is neutralized. Randor offers his father the throne back, but Miro politely declines, preferring to travel around Eternia to get to know his people again. A test of the Wind Raider's new autopilot ends in disaster when Skeletor tries to steal the technology. Adam and Cringer crash into the mist swamps. Adam turns into He-Man and pulls the ship out of the water, but the poisonous water drains his strength. They are saved by an old man and his grandson Drac, but the boy plans to hand the hero over to Skeletor in exchange for power. Skeletor, Trapjaw, and Whiplash scour the swamp to kidnap people for their mines. When they find out He-Man is vulnerable, they eagerly head his way. Drac's reality check comes fast. Skeletor burns the village down and enslaves the villagers before the deal is even made. With the medicine destroyed, He-Man, Drac, and his grandfather rush to the healing tree. Hunted by robots, Drac tries to strike up a conversation with Skeletor to buy the exact time He-Man needs to recover. Back at full strength, the hero storms the enemy ship, frees the villagers, and destroys the robots. The villains flee. Drac apologizes. He-Man delivers a moral lesson on the seduction of evil and rides off with Battlecat. An interplanetary circus lands in Eternia, and Orko goes to get ready, which always results in a magical disaster. At Snake Mountain, Skeletor throws a tantrum because the circus rejected his invitation. He decrees that if he can't watch it, no one else will. Orko decides to work with Crackers the Clown. Skeletor sends Evil Lyn and Beastman to ruin the event, but they are spotted in seconds and kicked out. He-Man helps set up the tents and convinces Crackers to hire Orko just to teach the wizard a lesson. The result is everyone laughing while Orko's dreams of stardom are crushed. The piece ends when Skeletor kidnaps the clown and announces the Circus of Skeletor. With no audience, he forces the performers to work for him, but He-Man crashes the venue. For some reason, the two decide to settle the dispute by fighting on trapezes and a tightrope. The grand finale happens when Skeletor accidentally lights the fireworks and gets launched out of the tent clinging to a rocket, just like Wile E. Coyote. At the palace, Adam listens to stories about He-Man. A smart kid asks why the hero doesn't just crush Skeletor once and for all. Adam gives the lame excuse that he doesn't hurt living beings. Only Luce, a blind boy, stays behind and says he dreams of meeting the hero. Adam promises an adventure and introduces him to Ram Man. Luce feels the warrior's face, asking where his neck is. A valid question given his ally's refrigerator-like anatomy. Adam turns into He-Man, and the trio sets off after the legendary singing crystals. Along the way, Luce shows heightened senses, dodging rocks that Ram Man trips over. They reach the cave where the crystals sing to the touch, but one falls and explodes in a flash. He-Man and Ram Man make the mistake of looking at the light and are temporarily blinded. The tables turn, and now it's Luce who must guide the brutes back. The journey goes smoothly until a bridge gives way, leaving the trio hanging.
Luce, are you all right?
Even without his sight, He-Man lassos a tree and saves everyone, proving that muscle memory is everything. At the palace, Man-at-Arms restores the hero's vision. Luce tells his friends about the adventure, but they doubt his story, until He-Man shows up in the flesh, cementing the boy as a living playground legend. Adam, Teela, Cringer, and Orko's trip is cut short when the attack track breaks down in the desert. Frustrated, Orko gives in to the temptation of using magic when Kothos, a sorcerer turned into a sand slug, convinces the Trollan to restore his human form. His gratitude comes in the form of betrayal. Kothos traps the group in a stasis field. He demands Evil Lyn in exchange for the hostages, but Skeletor refuses the offer unless He-Man is part of the package. Kothos puts the heroes on a raft as bait. Adam breaks free, turns into He-Man, and saves everyone from a tidal wave conjured by the villain. Not giving up, Kothos traps the group again and forces a helmet onto the hero that drains his strength. From his floating palace, he calls Skeletor for the exchange. In the desert, Skeletor brings a caged Evil Lyn. He-Man makes the smartest play of the day and convinces the villainess that they need to team up. She uses her magic to remove his helmet and free the hostages. He-Man returns the favor by hurling Skeletor's vehicle right at the villain himself. He-Man and Teela fly to Kothos' palace to rescue the Dark Sorceress. While the hero deals with traps, Teela and Orko free Evil Lyn. Blinded by revenge, she destroys the control panel and the structure plummets, throwing her straight into the ocean. Desperate about the fall, Kothos begs for help. He-Man holds the palace mid-air and demands he turn his life around. Kothos agrees to turn his fortress into a weather service and, to seal the deal, makes it rain right on top of Orko. The honey harvest in Buzz-Off's kingdom is interrupted by an attack from the humanoid insect Tycons. Orko tries to defend them with magic, fails miserably, and is sent off to get help. Through his crystal ball, Skeletor hatches a brilliantly flawed plan. Use the Tycons to devour the food supply and force King Randor to trade the secrets of Grayskull Grayskull for provisions. Orko alerts the palace, and He-Man, Battlecat, Teela, Man-at-Arms, and Buzz-Off ride to the rescue. The initial clash ends awkwardly. He-Man gives Skeletor such a severe scolding that the villain backs up and falls into a puddle. Against the Tycons, however, the moral lecture fails. The insects shoot beams from their eyes and put He-Man to sleep. Back at the palace, the group decides to bet on cooperation rather than force. The invaders, however, have already devoured the entire royal storehouse, including an indigestible baking soda pie made by Orko. Feeling sick, they retreat to their cave. Taking advantage of their vulnerable state, Man-at-Arms and Buzz-Off manage to convince them to make peace. Far away, while Skeletor waits for Randor's desperate call, He-Man shows up accompanied by the Tycon leader. They turn the villain, Webstore, and Cobra Khan upside down in a vase, recover the supplies, and head home. In a diplomatic move, Randor hires the cured insects as the new guards for the honey crops. The palace is enjoying a fireworks show sponsored by Skeletor, an obvious reason for suspicion. The fireworks soon turn into flaming magic spiders. Chaos ensues until He-Man and Battlecat create a localized storm to put out the fire. Feeling useless, Orko decides to run away from home. Skeletor disguises himself as a genie from a lamp, appears to the Trollin, and assures him that his friends hate him. The villain almost convinces Orko to step into a fake portal to Trolla, but the sorceress, in her falcon form Zoar, rescues the little guy, leaving Skeletor furious with half his costume falling off. At Grayskull, the sorceress conjures a movie screen and plays a highlight reel of Orko's best moments. With his confidence restored, he decides to return, but is ambushed by Skeletor and his henchmen. Under a truth spell, Orko is forced to reveal the answer to the drawbridge riddle, opening the castle doors. The sorceress tries to intervene, but Skeletor threatens to strap Orko to a rocket and shoot him into another galaxy. Left with no choice, she backs down, warning Prince Adam via telepathy. When the villains enter thinking they've won, the sorceress brings the castle's macabre decor to life. The furniture starts attacking, and Skeletor's crew flees in terror, running straight into He-Man, who arrives to secure the premises. Skeletor takes a day off and forbids any attacks on He-Man. Ignoring the order, Evil Lyn, Beastman, and Whiplash spy on Prince Adam on the planet Phantos and decide to kidnap him. Adam wanders away from the group, practically handing himself over on a silver platter, but Evil Lyn prefers the complicated route and awakens sleeping dinosaurs. While He-Man deals with prehistory, the villains kidnap Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Orko, taking them to Snake Mountain. There, Evil Lyn debuts her shrinking ray. She shrinks the prisoners down to doll size and places them in a giant boulder trap. He-Man breaches the base, listens to the villainess's surrender demands, pretends to consult King Randor, and retreats. As the villains celebrate their early victory, the protagonist hides and turns back into Adam, deciding to use his brain. His great intellectual idea is to shoot himself with the shrinking ray. Tiny, he slips into the trap, frees everyone, and reverses the weapon's effect. After telling the trio to run, he pulls his sword and turns back into He-Man, just for the pleasure of using the shrinking ray on the henchmen, leaving them minuscule and Evil Lyn foaming at the mouth over her ruined master plan. Man-at-Arms gifts the king and queen a painting of the bitter rose, a flower born from the tears of a goddess. To impress Driel, Orko plucks the real flower, triggering an ecological disaster. The mountain begins to collapse onto the insect people's village. Opportunistic as always, Skeletor sends Beastman and Trap Jaw to steal the magic flower, while He-Man, Battlecat, Man-at-Arms, and Teela are busy holding back the avalanches in the village. In the confusion, Orko is captured, but the insect man Garth comes to the rescue. The escape turns into a wacky race until Man-at-Arms and Teela pick them up in the Wind Raider. The pursuit heats up. The villains open fire, and through terrible aim, they hit the bitter rose, which withers instantly. The heroes return to the palace trying to save it with Man-at-Arms science, but nothing works. Everything seems lost until the most powerful cliché in the universe kicks in: true love. Orko's pure feeling as he gives the gift to Driel brings the flower back to life. Returned to its rightful place, the rose stabilizes the mountain and transforms into the legendary goddess herself, now cured of her bitterness, letting the mountain bloom before disappearing in peace. The Widget people are inaugurating a new Cordite reactor. At the local fair, Adam, Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Orko meet the illusionist Melbrag. After the Widget smudge wins a diamond betting, Teela accidentally reveals that her new friend is none other than the reactor's head head guard. The con artist takes note of the information. Man-at-Arms discovers that some of the cordite is contaminated with selenium. He-Man suggests discarding the stones. Far away, Smudge falls for Melbrag's smooth talk, bets the mine's cordite against the illusionist's ship, and loses everything. To cover up the deficit, Smudge puts the contaminated cordite into the reactor. Stricken with guilt, he confesses his monumental blunder to He-Man, who sets off ready to throw punches. They find Melbrag, who reveals he's going to sell the stone to Skeletor, and traps the duo in a force field. Spycore shows up to pick up the package, but lasts exactly as long as it takes He-Man to smash his vehicle. After destroying Melbrag's ship as a bonus, the hero rushes to the reactor but arrives too late. King Randor has already pressed the start button. The machine goes into meltdown. He-Man's solution is to lift the entire power plant and hurl it into space with all his might. And bizarrely, everyone cheers, ignoring the fact that Eternia's most expensive construction project just became orbital junk. Missing her daughter, the sorceress flies out as the Falcon Zoar to watch over Teela. The problem is timing. At Snake Mountain, Skeletor tests a new dimensional banishment weapon on a random bird. He hits Zoar. The sorceress is thrown into a harsh world and gets trapped in a cave with rapidly rising lava. At the palace, the spirit of Grayskull alerts Man-at-Arms and Teela of her disappearance, asking her to defend the castle. He-Man and Battlecat storm Skeletor's base, looking for answers. Upon discovering that Grayskull is vulnerable, the villain orders Evil Lyn to shoot the same weapon at the heroes. Trapped in the volcanic world, He-Man uses telepathy to find the sorceress, and combining the power of his sword with her magic, they carve a path back. At Grayskull, Teela dons the sorceress's mantle to bluff against the invasion led by Skeletor, Evil Lyn, and Trapjaw. Using illusions, she traps Trapjaw and steals the dimensional weapon. Things get tight when Evil Lyn breaks free and Skeletor disarms Teela, but the real sorceress resurfaces. Seeing he's lost his advantage, the villain flees, abandoning his own henchmen. With peace restored, the sorceress assures Teela that her mother would be proud of her courage. When Teela replies by wishing her mother was exactly like the sorceress, the Guardian can't hold back her tears and embraces her daughter in a heartwarming moment. The palace welcomes Squanch, Orko's trollin' friend and a compulsive liar. The visit is interrupted by the Intergalactic Police, who issue a warning about two dangerous criminals on Eternia, Slavemaster and Jawbreaker. Orko and Squanch find their ship in the forest and decide to capture them on their own. Orko is caught immediately. Squanch runs away and asks for help at the palace, but much like the classic boy who cried wolf story, nobody believes the lying kid until Man-at-Arms finds evidence at the scene. To lure the villains, Man-at-Arms sets up a rather curious bait, an exhibition fair where He-Man lifts concrete weights with Teela hanging from the top. Ironically, it works. Jawbreaker captures He-Man and takes him straight to the mines. Once there, He-Man finds Orko and a batch of bizarre slaves, including an elephant in a diaper. The hero wastes no time. He shatters the chains, frees everyone, and overpowers the criminals, shipping them off to face trial. In the end, Squanch confesses he only bragged to be accepted. With his infinite patience, He-Man assures him he doesn't need to make up stories to have friends. Skeletor resorts to psychological warfare. He summons General Tataran to build a portal in the village of Zack, meticulously designed to collapse and break He-Man's spirit with a fake death. When Adam, Man-at-Arms, and Orko investigate, Adam turns into He-Man. Skeletor disguises Tataran as a human and taunts the hero until he punches a pillar. The portal collapses onto the fake human, who survives unharmed inside a force field. Finding no pulse in the rubble, He-Man falls into deep despair. The guilt drives him to return to Grayskull, revert to Adam, and throw the power sword into the castle's abyss. Meanwhile, Orko uncovers the farce in the village, but gets captured. Without He-Man, Teela carries a ticking time bomb by herself to stop the goblin invasion. Orko manages to escape and races to warn Adam about the trick. With the weight lifted off his shoulders, Adam dives into the abyss, lands on a giant web, retrieves the sword, and becomes He-Man. He arrives in Zack just in time, as Skeletor surrounds Teela. During the confrontation, a stray shot accelerates the bomb's timer, and the villain flees. He-Man scoops Teela up in his arms and sprints as the explosion obliterates the portal and wipes out the goblin troops. Teela wakes up dizzy, and He-Man carries her off into the sunset. The palace welcomes Koldar and his robotic horse. At Snake Mountain, a lightning strike opens a passageway where Skeletor finds the Mirror of Moravad, capable of creating evil clones. While Beast-Man unleashes monsters on a village to distract the heroes, Evil Lyn kidnaps Koldar. Skeletor clones the prisoner and sends the evil Koldar to infiltrate Grayskull. The clone joins a group of tourists and slips away through the castle's corridors. He-Man is furious when he finds out, but the sorceress warns that she cannot intervene, as the castle is a safe haven for the hero's friends. Inside, the clone encounters the Guardian of Grayskull, a giant stone face, who asks him his motives. The villain replies that he wants power to rule the universe. Wrong answer. The Guardian tells him to open the door on the left, disintegrating the clone into shards of glass. Seeing the scene, He-Man figures out the trick. Returning to the palace, He-Man runs into Teela and Man-at-Arms, chatting peacefully with Skeletor. It turns out the original Koldar tricked the villain, making him step through the artifact and creating a good Skeletor. This bizarrely polite clone guides He-Man to Snake Mountain, helps rescue Koldar, and, before fading away, shatters the mirror forever.
To the mirror!
Count Marzo is back in action, destabilizing the youth with a dangerous substance, the Flower of Eternia. Under its effect, the boy Jono climbs a gigantic wall and nearly falls, being saved at the last second by He-Man and Teela. Adam finds a stash of the plant, which Orko quickly recognizes as the Black Nightmare from Trolla, famous for frying brains with paranoia. The duo tracks Marzo in the Wind Raider but ends up trapped in a force field. They are freed by one of Orko's spells that conveniently goes wrong. Meanwhile, Marzo is already getting Jono's brother hooked, but the boy has a sudden pang of conscience and tells the clients to run. Furious, Marzo orders his henchman Chimera to unleash wolf bats on the brothers. He-Man steps in and handles the bat problem in the blink of an eye. The villains flee, but the sorceress tracks the operation to the planet Eronia, the cartel's central lab. Arriving there, He-Man tosses the henchman aside without breaking a sweat, and Teela delivers an NFL-style tackle to Marzo, guaranteeing them both a one-way ticket to a prison planet. Exploring the desert, Adam and Man-at-Arms stumble upon the wreckage of an alien ship. After Adam turns into He-Man solely to clear the area of a giant crab, they rescue the pilot, the damaged cyborg Robolto. In the lab, Man-at-Arms racks his brain trying to fix him, but an accidental bump from Orko turns the machine back on. Robolto introduces himself as an explorer, but a spy of Modulok's watches everything. In the dead of night, Modulok breaks into the lab and kidnaps the robot, reprogramming the poor guy to rob Station Zeta. Adam and Man-at-Arms track the signal but are attacked by a Robolto in Terminator mode. When He-Man wakes up, he is trapped in a force field while Man-at-Arms is strapped to a bizarre machine, with which Modulok plans to drain his intelligence for a second head. Desperate, He-Man appeals to the cyborg's rational side, reminding him of who saved him. In a clash of sheer willpower, Roboto breaks his villainous programming, destroys the machine, and shuts down the force field. Free, He-Man hurls Modulok straight into a vat of acid. Back at the palace, Man-at-Arms patches up the final damage, and Queen Marlena officially declares the date as Robolto's birthday. Diplomacy is put at risk when the dragon Morningstar uses an ice crystal to extinguish the mystic fire of the wise Granomir. Taking the throne, he blames humans for the blackout and declares war. The timing is terrible. He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Orko are en route to Darksmoke precisely to celebrate a peace treaty between the species. Forced into an emergency landing by rebel dragons, they find Granomir powerless and suspicious, but refusing the war. Without magic, however, he cannot stop Morningstar. The Elder casually drops that only the flame from the Well of Shadows can cure him. Orko takes the hint, and the trio travels to the well, collecting the mystic fire with extreme ease. With his powers and authority restored, Granomir shelves the war. Morningstar, refusing to accept defeat, challenges him to a fire breath duel, but quickly learns the mistake of taking on a legend. Granomir wins effortlessly and shows mercy. The treaty is upheld, and the crisis ends on such a friendly note that the heroes and the giant dragon burst out laughing at a bad joke. During a bizarre game of baseball played with musical instruments, the group notices something strange. The clouds have frozen in the sky. Time has literally stopped. Amidst the confusion, they find a little girl trapped in a hole. Teela slips while trying to help, and Adam turns into He-Man to pull them both out. The girl is Princess Rhea, who reveals that the wizard Hexon paralyzed time to reach the Council of Seasons before her father and steal the throne. The group splits up. He-Man goes to warn the council, while the others try to save the Emperor. It doesn't take long before He-Man has to detour and free his friends from magic vines. The biggest obstacle comes next. Hexon has scattered the glowing sands of time into the middle of the desert. In a scene straight out of slapstick comedy, He-Man tries to pick up the magic sand grain by grain. Luckily for him, the villain shows up looking for a fight and makes the amateur mistake of using magic to gather all the glowing sand into a tornado. Orko only has to guide the wind back into the hourglass. With Hexon trapped, time starts flowing again. The wizard's punishment? Setting the hands on every clock on the planet right.
You have a few clocks to set. And when he's finished here, the authorities will come to pick him up.
Man-at-Arms develops a duplication machine capable of creating miniatures of any object. Meanwhile, the palace tries to solve the theft of Vambite, an ore that grants invisibility to curious teddy bear-like creatures. Adam suggests cloning the ore, but Skeletor blows a hole in the floor, steals the equipment, and escapes. In a decision of pure chaos, instead of using the invention strategically, the villain creates dozens of miniatures of himself. An aggressive army of mini-Skeletors marches against the palace. Warned by Mossman, He-Man avoids a frontal invasion by using the secret tunnels. Man-at-Arms guarantees that destroying the original machine will undo the clones. The little creatures give He-Man their last Vambite stone. Invisible, he infiltrates Snake Mountain, pits the clones against each other, and, using the distraction, smashes the machine. As a bonus, he discovers that Skeletor was the one stealing the Vambite all along. End of the double trouble. While Adam, Teela, Orko, and Cyclone listen to the classic story of Beauty and the Beast, a fleet of robotic ships launches a surprise attack on the palace. The strike is pure distraction. Out back, Skeletor kidnaps Teela and Orko, freezes them in pods, and shoots them off to an unknown location, demanding the crown of Eternia as ransom. The pods land in a gloomy castle. When the ice melts, the hostages find a feast and the master of the house, the giant monster of Moragor. The parallel with the fairy tale is literal. He-Man refuses to pay the ransom, consults the sorceress, reverting to Adam merely due to magical bureaucracy, and sets off. Moragor is no villain, but a victim following orders to spare his people from Skeletor's curses. As He-Man arrives smashing through the security robots, Teela convinces the giant that his actions matter more than his looks. When Skeletor shows up to demand results, Moragor rebels, and He-Man kicks the villain back to Snake Mountain. In gratitude, Teela kisses the giant on the cheek, instantly breaking the curse and restoring his original human form. Beastman and Trapjaw plant a seed that instantly sprouts a colossal orange crystal mountain. With their new base ready, they kidnap Orko and send peculiar demands to King Randor, all the photanium on Eternia, and to be addressed as Mr. Beastman and Mr. Trapjaw. To control the wizard, they use the Amber Crystal of Malarca, forcing him to obey only direct orders. They didn't foresee, however, the prisoner's malicious compliance, as he interprets every command in the most catastrophic way possible, driving his captors insane. He-Man and Man-at-Arms consult the sorceress, who reveals the crystal's origin, the pacifist insectoid race of Polteeth. Ironically, the heroes are immediately captured by the creature's spears. The tables turn when He-Man saves an insect from falling off a cliff, earning the Queen's Amulet Nullifier. At the Orange Fortress, He-Man activates the artifact, shattering the crystal and obliterating the mountain. When he finds the villains, there isn't even a battle. Exhausted by the Trollan's bizarre antics, Beastman and Trapjaw practically beg He-Man to take him back. Danger now falls from space. An earthly spacecraft travels through a vortex towards Eternia carrying astronauts Mark and Andrea, whose mission was to blow up a meteor on a collision course with Earth. Andrea ejects at the palace, and Queen Marlena recognizes her, revealing her own past as an astronaut. Mark, however, crash lands at Snake Mountain, where Skeletor uses a truth scanner, discovers everything, and steals the ship's warhead to vaporize Grayskull. Adam becomes He-Man and heads out with Andrea for the rescue. At the enemy base, Andrea starts a fight among the guards to distract them, giving He-Man time to bend the bars and free the Colonel. However, the villain's robotic bird has already dropped the missile over Grayskull. He-Man races in the Wind Raider and catches the bomb mid-air milliseconds before impact. With the ship repaired but the launch system broken, Marlena reverses the sensors to send the ship back, and He-Man volunteers. They cross the vortex and, unable to fire the missile, He-Man hurls the colossal warhead at the meteor with his bare hands. Earth is saved.
Ooh, 1 second. You did it. You mean
Before leaving, Mark invites Marlena to return, but she chooses to stay on Eternia. An emergency call comes in from Roxtown, a peaceful village where the inhabitants sing to themselves in the streets. The appearance of the giant Tingler has terrified the region. King Randor dispatches the team to investigate, but not without first criticizing the superstitions of others. On the way, Adam tries to calm a furious mob with the brilliant excuse that the monster doesn't exist, ignoring the fact that they had just seen its silhouette. With some justification, the villagers treat him like a lunatic and march up the mountain with torches. The mystery is quickly solved for the heroes. The Tingler isn't evil, just a veterinary medicine enthusiast, which he proves by healing Cringer's injured paw. Meanwhile, the mob gets trapped on a cliff that begins to collapse. He-Man shows up and improvises a bridge. Everyone crosses safely except for one of the village singers. Instead of acting, He-Man simply watches from afar, leaving the Tingler himself to risk his life to rescue the woman. This act of heroism changes public opinion, and the entire village grows to love the giant. And to top off the mission, a random donkey flirts with Cringer. Eternia Day is the date when King Randor opens the palace to those in need and wields the scepter of power. Knowing this, Skeletor and Evil Lyn plan an infiltration, disguising Cobra Khan as a poor citizen. Fearing that Orko might see through the disguise, the villains ambush the little mage in the forest and drain his magic. Man-at-Arms lacks the technology to fix the damage, but Orko remembers a magical waterfall deep beneath Eternia. Adam assumes the form of He-Man and sets off with his friend. They find a magical door that only opens with a please. Orko complies and passes through. He-Man opts for brute force to tear the door off its hinges, but is humiliated by a mystical barrier. The solution is to revert back to Adam, walk in casually, and resume his heroic form on the other side. After navigating caves full of traps and putting up with an annoying gatekeeper, they reach the waterfall, and Orko regains his magic. Back at the palace, Cobra Khan comes face to face with King Randor. Just as he is about to strike, Orko appears and unmasks him. Khan is captured and banished to the gatekeeper's dimension, a chatty punishment worse than any prison. Mechaneck is seen playing frisbee in the palace courtyard, serving as the hook for Man-at-Arms to reveal his tragic past. His son Philip was swept away by a gale at Dragon's Mountain. During the storm, Mechaneck broke his neck and received his famous cybernetic extension from Man-at-Arms. But Philip fell into the clutches of Count Marzo. The villain seeks out Mechaneck, demanding he hand over King Randor and Queen Marlena in exchange for the boy, aiming to rule Eternia. Mechaneck rejects the blackmail and alerts Man-at-Arms, who recruits Adam and Cringer. Crossing the desert, the team rests in an abandoned fort. Obviously, it's a trap. Marzo shows up to mock them. He-Man tries to intimidate him just by looking tough, but fails, and the Count kidnaps the monarchs right then and there. The pursuit leads to the villain's mountain fortress. After invading the place with Buzz-Off's help, the situation turns into sheer chaos, and Philip falls down a dark pit. This is the perfect moment for Mechaneck to use his ability, stretching his bionic neck dozens of meters down the hole for his son to grab onto and be hoisted up. The reunion is touching, albeit surreal. A beaming Philip hugs his dad, completely ignoring the fact that his neck now works like Inspector Gadget's. In the forest, Korea scolds her boyfriend Farron for not being brave like He-Man. Fed up, he walks away. The second he leaves, a giant bird attacks the girl, and He-Man appears out of nowhere to save her. Noticing her fascination, Farron makes the worst decision possible. He pretends He-Man is his alter ego. He lures the real He-Man into a cave, makes up an excuse to leave, and ensures Korea sees the hero walking out shortly after. She buys the lie. Meanwhile, Modulok escapes from prison and calls Skeletor, asking for a spot at Snake Mountain. Humiliatingly, Skeletor refuses, calling him incompetent even by his own standards. Desperate to prove his worth, Modulok wanders the forest and overhears Farron bragging about being He-Man. The villain kidnaps the boy, locking him in a cell and demanding he transform. Korea runs to the palace and tells Adam everything. The prince turns into the hero and informs her that her boyfriend is a massive liar. The rescue mission is embarrassingly simple. Modulok built a railway that leads straight into his own prison, making the break-in a breeze. Once safe, Korea decides she prefers someone normal and alive over a fake hero, and He-Man wraps up the adventure with a classic wink at the camera. At Snake Mountain, Skeletor welcomes the toy maker, who promises to conquer kingdoms with his toys and targets Man-at-Arms. Meanwhile, Man-at-Arms is testing a machine designed to melt hills and clouds, requiring He-Man to intervene before the ecosystem collapses. Meanwhile, Orko is in his needy phase. He's the perfect target for the toy maker, who strokes the mage's ego and hands him 3 magical toys: a teddy bear, a soldier, and a diplodocus. Orko falls for it and brings them all inside. Adam, Teela, and Man-at-Arms are mesmerized by the moving toys. But at night, things change. In a genuinely creepy sequence, the toys grow in size, attack Man-at-Arms, and drag him into the darkness. By morning, Orko throws a dramatic guilt trip. Adam comforts him and turns into He-Man. The group, accompanied by a rather unenthusiastic Ram Man, tracks the toys to the Valley of Echoes. The final showdown is brief. Orko magically gains control over the pieces, and He-Man defeats Skeletor using the Diplodocus. Teela rescues Man-at-Arms, and the toy maker is arrested. Purely out of habit, He-Man also locks up Beastman and Trapjaw, even though they did absolutely nothing wrong this week. In a mysterious castle, Arvella summons Angest, the king of the realm of evil, to free her father. Angest agrees on one condition. He wants the Star Child in exchange. Arvella goes after the girl, who is visiting the palace with her bodyguard, Bowina. When night falls, Arvella breaks into the bedroom and kidnaps the Star Child. Orko sounds the alarm and alerts He-Man. The hero and Bowina set off for Castle Landros, ordering Orko to stay behind. Naturally, he ignores them and tags along. Upon arriving, they catch Angest breaking his promise. He kidnaps the Star Child and Arvella and drags the entire rescue party into his dimension, flashing a psychopathic smile before dancing like a maniac. The party ends when Angest sends his armored infantry after the girl. He-Man and Bowina dispatch the soldiers without lethal force. The battle ends in a rather pathetic way. Orko simply smashes a pumpkin over Angest's head. The heroes rescue Arvella's father, and the Star Child uses her magic to teleport everyone back to Eternia. On Eternia, Adam, Teela, and Orko visit Mount Zagraz, where the wizard Zagraz manages a comet school and introduces Doodles, a rebellious space rock. Watching through his spy globe, Skeletor decides that comets are the perfect weapon to invade Grayskull and orders the wizard's kidnapping. Zagraz warns that the comets will cause an apocalypse without supervision, but the villain just demands they destroy He-Man. Chaos erupts on Eternia with tidal waves and avalanches. Adam and Man-at-Arms watch casually until a comet aims straight for the palace. He-Man jumps into the Wind Raider but fails miserably to protect the tower. Frustrated, he flies to the mountain with Teela. Zagraz is gone, but Skeletor appears in a projection and spills the entire plan. The duo invades Snake Mountain, tosses the guards into a mud puddle, and corners the villain. Instead of fighting, He-Man delivers a pacifist lecture. Skeletor tries to attack, but Doodles tears through the sky, heading straight for the base. Panicking, the villain tries in vain to stop the comet. He-Man frees Zagraz, and everyone laughs as the space rock chases Skeletor into the exact same mud puddle where his henchmen are still ridiculously stuck.
Oh, I hate comets, and I hate mud.
Adam introduces Moss Man to Malaktha. His great power consists of falling asleep and camouflaging himself as a plant. The three board a cruise ship to search for the ancient island of Avathar. Trapjaw is also on the ship, sporting a pathetic pirate disguise, and rats the heroes out to Snake Mountain. They find the island quickly. Malaktha discovers a secret passage to the ancient museum of Avathar. Moss Man talks to the moss on the walls and locates the ancient mirror. The artifact awakens, revealing that it holds all the knowledge of the ancient empire. In a fine display of responsible archaeology, Adam and Malaktha simply haul the mirror back to the ship, while Moss Man loots the rest of the museum. Trapjaw receives orders to steal the artifact. Attempting to use a storm as cover to make his move, he messes everything up and is caught red-handed. To make matters worse, a boy in a lighthouse accidentally guides the ship toward the rocks. He-Man steps in, prevents the shipwreck, and safely tows the boat back to the docks. Surprisingly, the story stops right there. No conclusion, no moral lesson, it just ends. At the palace, the gang is playing a game of standing perfectly still until a flying saucer parks right above them. It's the Bendari, aliens from a world without good or evil, who decide to host a scavenger hunt between the champions of each side to understand the concepts. Fisto complains that he'd never be picked with He-Man around. At Snake Mountain, Skeletor thinks the same and, having no desire to compete, sends Spikor as his representative after making him extra evil in a machine. With He-Man out of sight, the aliens choose Fisto for the side of good. The challenge is an egg hunt in the forest. Good follows the rules, evil does whatever it wants. Spikor takes the lead by cheating with henchmen, while Skeletor digs holes underground for no apparent reason. With evil at a huge advantage, Adam turns into He-Man and replaces Fisto mid-game, utterly crushing his friend's self-esteem. He finds a special egg and ties the score. It all comes down to the final target at the top of a gigantic tree. Spikor gets tangled up during the climb. He-Man saves him, and the henchman repays the favor by knocking him down. He-Man resorts to cheap tactics, shaking the trunk until the prize falls right into his hand. The Bendari declare Good the winner and leave. He-Man shows off in the courtyard under Fisto's furious glare, and Skeletor throws a massive fit because he was too busy trying to pull a Bugs Bunny with a drill. On King Randor's birthday, he presents an award to the owners of an animal sanctuary. Ricky, their son, gives Adam, Teela, and Orko a tour, taking them to Blue Valley to see a rare species. Meanwhile, Skeletor hires the scientist, Modok, to build a rage ray to enrage the animals and ruin the king's party. The days when he wanted to conquer the universe have clearly changed. Using a teleporter, Modok steals the animals right in front of the heroes. Desperate upon being discovered, Skeletor fires the Rage Ray at some monkeys to stall them. He-Man handles the situation quickly, so the villain sends more beasts. Chaos reigns when Skeletor teleports the animals directly to the king's party, terrifying his bizarre guests. He-Man neutralizes the animals one by one with Ricky's help. After an endless round of thank yous, they go after Skeletor. Ironically, the one who helps take the villain down is Beastman, jealous over losing his job to the scientist. In the end, Ricky calls the animals his family, and He-Man, in a burst of questionable wisdom, replies that we are all one big family. The dust from all these battles has finally gotten to the protagonist's brain. At the palace, the peace enjoyed by Adam and his friends is interrupted by Cobra Khan and a land shark begging for help. The Reptons are about to enter permanent hibernation because their eternal flame has gone out. The heroes buy the story. He-Man and Battlecat follow Khan to the lair. On the way, the monster Korlok blocks their path. He-Man dispatches it, but Khan surprises everyone by saving Man-at-Arm's life.
What? You.
The backstabbing doesn't take long. Inside the lair, Khan disappears, guiding the group by voice to the Flames chamber. As soon as they enter, the Reptons place them under arrest. Khan had already convinced King Pythos that He-Man put out the fire, tricking the king into promising the crown to whoever restored it. The plan was perfect, except that Khan used an ice crystal to sabotage the fire permanently, and has absolutely no idea how to fix it. While the villain deals with his own incompetence, Scales, the court jester, frees the heroes. With zero subtlety, He-Man rips a giant stalactite from the ceiling and drills through the floor straight into molten volcanic rock. The heat rises, the flame is reborn, and the Reptons finally realize who the true traitor was. He-Man is riding Stridor toward Castle Grayskull, bringing two prisoners into custody, Clawful and Spikor. The sorceress appears at the gate to welcome the escort, but quickly realizes she's fallen for a massive Trojan horse. The supposed prisoner is Skeletor in disguise. The hero is actually Faker, the horse is Night Stalker, and the other prisoner is Evil Lyn. The sorceress hastily retreats into the castle and activates the magical defenses, but Skeletor is already one step ahead. He knows the real prize isn't in the upper halls, but buried deep within the bowels of Grayskull, and he heads straight down. Far from the commotion, Teela is having her big moment, about to be decorated as the new Man-at-Arms, but the ceremony is cut short when the sorceress sends a telepathic distress call. Adam alerts the army about the attack, manages to slip out of sight and pulls his sword to become He-Man. The warriors of Eternia arrive in full force and smash Skeletor's army at the castle doors. Teela heads down to the depths to stop the villain from stealing Eternia's magic, but comes face to face with him and Evil Lyn. He-Man and Battlecat arrive shortly after, and all hell breaks loose. Mossman tries to play the hero by restraining Skeletor, but gets completely destroyed, and in a masterstroke, Skeletor tricks He-Man, making the hero stab him in the exact spot that disables the Orb of Power's force field. Thinking he's already won, the villain attacks the orb. That's when the sorceress freezes time and drops the hard truth. If that orb shatters, the entire universe will be wiped out. Like a true protagonist, He-Man decides to use his own power sword to channel the magic. Even though the sorceress warns him it's basically a death sentence. He splits the sword in half and absorbs the energy, which ends up pulverizing both himself and Skeletor in the process. The only thing left of the villain is the top of his staff, which Evil Lyn snatches before fleeing. Back at the palace, Duncan has the worst job of the day, explaining to the royal family that He-Man is dead. The king is heartbroken, but the queen breaks down completely, stating that they've lost their own son. Amidst the general confusion, Duncan finally drops the bombshell that Adam and He-Man were the same person. The result? The king, furious over the lie, strips Duncan of his title and banishes him from the palace. Teela, feeling like her entire life has been a scripted lie, decides to walk away too. Time passes, and reality sets in. Without magic, Eternia has become a very different place. Teela has left royalty behind, and now makes a living recovering lost artifacts with her new partner, Andra. After stealing a magic glove from Stinkor, the two are hired by an old woman named Majestra. The mission is simple but borders on suicidal. Steal an ancient chalice right out of Snake Mountain. Andra hesitates, but Teela is in immediately. Upon arriving, nostalgia hits hard as Teela remembers the old raids she used to pull off with He-Man. But the place has changed. With magic scarce, Triclops has taken control and founded a bizarre cult that worships the motherboard, swapping mysticism for technology. He forces his followers to drink from the exact chalice Teela needs to steal. The catch is that anyone who drinks the liquid turns half machine, half human, in a cyberpunk style gone horribly wrong. Teela steps in and distracts Triclops and Trapjaw so Andra can grab the cup. A massive brawl breaks out, complete with blast attacks self-destructing in the middle of the mess. A horde of cyborgs chases the girls through the caves, but they manage to escape in one piece. When it's time to get paid, Majestra offers double the money if they deliver the chalice to Castle Grayskull. Teela refuses right away, since King Randor turned the place into a forbidden zone, but they end up going anyway. Inside, the sorceress is isolated, struggling to keep Eternia's last solitary spark of magic alive. As Majestra approaches the sorceress, Teela lays her cards on the table. She knew all along that the old woman was Evil Lyn in disguise, and the chalice is actually the top of Skeletor's staff. Teela hurls a spear at the villainess, but Cringer, yes, the man himself, appears out of nowhere and catches the weapon in his teeth. Surprisingly, Evil Lyn didn't go there to pick a fight. She uses what's left of the staff to strengthen the sorceress's magic. With a second wind, the Guardian tasks Evil Lyn with protecting that last spark with her life and hands Teela a heavy new mission: travel to Subternia and Preternia to retrieve the two halves of the power sword. The new and unlikely trio, Teela, Andra, and Evil Lyn, are hacking their way through a dense jungle of vines with a machete. The nostalgic mood continues to haunt Teela, who spends the trip reminiscing about how her adoptive father, Man-at-Arms, always showed up at the last second to save her and He-Man's necks in the past. Speaking of him, on the other side of the forest, we find Duncan living in anonymity. He's in the middle of a line of pilgrims trying to get a few drops of water from the Fountain of Filegro, one of the last active magical springs in the world. But the peace doesn't last long. Triclops and his motherboard cult show up to crash the party, and Trapjaw simply obliterates the fountain using a crystal cannon. Duncan doesn't think twice and charges at the cyborgs to protect the crowd and save the little water he managed to get. Andra disables the cannon, and Teela and Evil Lyn join the fight, but the whole group ends up tangled in electric cables shot from the enemy's arms. Just when Triclops thinks he's won, a completely feral beast man appears out of nowhere. It turns out he's now sworn loyalty to Evil Lyn, and single-handedly he wipes the floor with Triclops, forcing the villain into a retreat. After the dust settles, Teela finally realizes that the brawling pilgrim was Duncan. The reunion is intense, but he declines the invitation to help reforge the sword, reminding her that a royal decree forbade him from ever forging a weapon again. He explains that the magical water was to keep Orko alive, who is gravely ill in his cabin. The robot Roboto is also there, and offers his services. Since he possesses his creator's memories, he can reforge the weapon himself. In the end, the logistics are sorted out. Roboto and an Orko begging for one last adventure join Tila, while Duncan decides to return to Grayskull to be the sorceress's bodyguard. The group's journey continues across the Crystal Sea toward the underworld of Subternia, but their boat is ambushed by Merman and his thugs. Honoring Tila's memories, Duncan suddenly appears on a hoverbike and saves the day once again. They force Merman to reveal the location of Subternia's gate, and Duncan finally heads off to Grayskull, leaving behind a warning that nothing survives for very long in the realm of the dead. The entrance is guarded by a gigantic headless skeleton. In a highly macabre move, Evil Lyn slots the top of her staff into the creature's neck, and the ground opens up to reveal a dizzying staircase. Tila tries to play the lone wolf and says she'll go down alone, but the team ignores her attitude and everyone descends together to face whatever lies ahead. The descent into Subternia takes its toll immediately. The group barely sets foot in the underworld before being completely separated, scattered across different nightmares thanks to the place's bizarre aura. Orko and Evil Lyn land straight in Trolla, the mage's home planet, except the magic well there is completely bone dry, proving that the entire universe is collapsing. They are attacked by shadows, and since Evil Lyn can't use her powers, their only option is to run. Meanwhile, Tila comes face to face with Scareglow, who, of course, has the half of the sword she needs. He proposes a fair trade, the sword for her fear. Tila strikes her classic badass pose, claiming she's not afraid of anything, which earns her a one-way, non-stop ticket to the pit of darkness. Her nightmare is literal. Tila has to fight He-Man himself, and then a younger version of herself.
They lied because they were trying to protect you. From what?
She only manages to turn the tables when she finally swallows her pride and admits her true fear, not measuring up to her own destiny. With that, she manifests the shadow half of the sword and drains Scareglow's power. On the other side of the underworld, Andra, Roboto, and Beastman are basically surviving a zombie apocalypse with fire bats, fighting off shadow beasts that grow stronger by feeding on their fear. When the separation magic breaks, the group reunites. Evil Lyn takes the sword Tila won and opens a portal to Preternia, except Scareglow comes back for round 2, and this is where the comic relief becomes the team's greatest hero. Orko sacrifices himself to hold the villain off and ensure everyone escapes through the portal. The scene is heavy, and Tila is devastated, but she barely has time to process the loss of her friend, because the one waiting to welcome them on the other side is none other than Adam. Preternia is basically Eternia's version of heaven, and a sense of mourning dictates the pace of their arrival. Adam is carving a tombstone for Orko, and the group takes a moment to say goodbye to the mage. The problem is that Preternia is a one-way trip. Adam hands his half of the sword to Tila, and the two set off to find King Grayskull, looking for a loophole in the rules to get back home. On the way, they stumble upon the Hall of Fame of past He-Man. The catch is that everyone there gets to choose their own appearance, but Adam is the only one who prefers to stay in his normal form, without the bodybuilder muscles. Meanwhile, Andra and the rest of the crew decide to turn the entire central tower into a giant forge to fix the sword. For the heat source, Evil Lyn uses the magical ember to spark a reactor straight in Roboto's chest. Far from there, the reckoning happens. Adam apologizes for hiding his identity, and Tila explains she needed time to process his death and the lie. Mossman warns Adam that he can return to save the universe's magic, but if he does, the gates of heaven will be closed to him forever. The forge works, but the price is extreme. The sword's energy causes an explosion that destroys Roboto. Before shutting down, he tells Tila that, for a moment, he felt like he was much more than just a machine. King Grayskull opens the portal, and the group returns to Eternia, dropping right into the middle of a war. The Hall of Wisdom is under attack by Triclops' techno cult. Duncan is there holding the front line, and Cringer almost crushes Adam in a hug. Inside, Adam joins the sword, restores the magic, and the hall reverts to the imposing Castle Grayskull. The sorceress regains her strength, and everything seems resolved. Or so it would seem, if Evil Lyn's bag hadn't started moving. The Havoc staff materializes on its own and simply stabs stabs Adam in the back. The plot twist hits hard. Skeletor wasn't dead. He hid his very essence in the staff this whole time. He takes the sword from a fallen Adam, invokes the power of Grayskull, and a giant skull face takes over the sky. With Skeletor now in his superpowered Skelegod version, the situation turns into a complete disaster. Adam, who miraculously survived the stabbing, watches the villain brandish the power sword as the new master of the castle. He and Cringer even try to set a trap to separate Evil Lyn from the staff, but the power gap is absurd. Duncan and Andra hold the front line while Teela rescues Adam, but Skelegod stomps everyone effortlessly. He raises the sword to finish off the prince, but the sorceress burns her last drop of magic to block the attack and teleport the heroes away. Retaliation comes in kind. Skelegod runs the sorceress through with the sword. Duncan rushes to help her but is thrown into the dungeon. Even Evil Lyn is shocked by the level of brutality, and it gets worse for her. Skelegod reveals he secretly drained her energy and that her prize will be becoming the new sorceress, meaning she'll be trapped in the castle serving him for eternity. The realization that she was used hits her instantly. Far away, at the palace, Teela uses her energy combined with what's left of the sorceress to heal Adam. Tensions are already high when Clampchamp and Fisto nearly start a brawl with the group out of pure miscommunication. Cringer manages to calm things down right as they discover the place is being evacuated. They don't even have time to plan their next move. Skelegod attacks the palace full force and starts turning everyone into the undead, in true The Walking Dead style. Clampchamp and Fisto fall to this curse, but Adam and the core group manage a narrow escape. Skelegod corners the group shortly after and rubs it in Adam's face that he now controls life and death, and by extension, controls the hero himself. But the episode delivers its final card. Adam faces the villain head-on and reveals that the power sword was never the true source of his strength. It was just a conduit. The real power, all along, was inside him. The clash between He-Man and Skelegod reaches an absurd level. Skelegod thinks he's in control, hurling the hero through the air and unleashing an undead army on Teela and the rest of the team. But channeling the power of Grayskull directly without the sword comes with a heavy price. Adam basically turns into a nuclear reactor, losing containment. Teela realizes that if the fight continues, the entire city will turn to dust. Without a second thought, she uses her newfound magic to teleport the whole team to the mountains. Back at Castle Grayskull, Skelegod is furious. He corners Evil Lyn, the new sorceress, demanding to know if she had anything to do with Adam's new powers. She swears she didn't, and the villain decides he needs He-Man alive to study the phenomenon. He also heads down to the dungeon to interrogate Duncan. But Man-at-Arms isn't intimidated and throws the truth in his face. Skelegod wants the power for himself, while He-Man only uses it to protect others. In the mountains, the situation spirals completely out of control. He-Man is feral, irrational. Not even Cringer can calm him down. He attacks a manticore, scares Teela, and takes off like a force of nature after his father, King Randor. He arrives at the camp, decimating the royal guard, ready to destroy everything. And here the story delivers something unexpected. Randor doesn't raise a weapon. He simply embraces his out-of-control son and confesses that losing him nearly destroyed him inside. The emotional shock is enough. Paternal love resets Adam's system, and he relinquishes the power, returning to normal. Meanwhile, behind the scenes at Grayskull, Beastman plants a seed in Evil Lyn's head. He reminds her that, as the sorceress, she has the power to strip everything from Skelegod. She pretends not to care, but the idea is already there. With the dust temporarily settling, the royal family tries to pick up the pieces. Randor and Adam talk, and the king makes it clear he holds no grudge over the fact that his son and Teela hid He-Man's identity for so long. In a gesture of gratitude, Randor promotes Andra to lieutenant of the Royal Guard for helping bring Adam back. But the happy family vibe is cut short when Queen Marlena appears, and it becomes obvious that their marriage fell apart in Adam's absence. Randor blamed his wife for keeping the secret, and the tension between them is palpable. Marlena reveals she was on the verge of returning to Earth before the war broke out, but at least reuniting with her son makes up for the marital drama. At Grayskull, the real revolution happens in silence. Duncan, even imprisoned, remains the voice of reason. Evil Lyn goes to his cell to debate about power, and Man-at-Arms reminds her of a crucial detail. Skelegod only has the power she allows him to have. We see a bit of the witch's past, discovering she was saved from the streets by Skeletor and is merely paying off an old debt with no real loyalty. Skelegod, feeling threatened, tries to impress Evil Lyn by showing showing her the vastness of the cosmos and his plans for domination. Instead of inspiring respect, he only scares her, and that's when she decides to act. In a move that would make any classic villain proud, Evil Lyn simply pulls the rug out from under him. She strips Skeletor's magic, takes the power sword, invokes the power of Grayskull for herself, and ascends as God Lyn. To prove she isn't bluffing, her first act in office is wiping Preternia entirely off the map. An absolute show of force. And, as if the day couldn't get any more insane, who shows up at Adam's base asking for help? Skeletor himself, now in his mortal form and completely defeated. The shock of seeing Preternia erased from existence leaves everyone paralyzed. Teela tries to manifest her magic to call on Eternia for help, but the connection fails. Andra tries to break the magical barrier imposed by God Lyn and fails as well. The vibe is absolute doomsday. This justifies the most bizarre alliance possible. Adam having a civilized conversation with Skeletor. The former Lord of Destruction lays it out straight, admitting that either they work together or his ex-assistant is going to flip the universe's breaker switch. The problem is that Adam, traumatized by his last meltdown, refuses to invoke the power of Grayskull without the sword. At the castle, God Lyn strolls through the celestial apex, which only cements her conviction that the universe needs to end. Her moment of nihilistic reflection is interrupted by trumpets. Adam and Skeletor are at the front gate for a peaceful negotiation. It's the perfect distraction. While God Lyn heads down to deal with them, and obviously reject any deal, Teela and Andra infiltrate the castle through the back. The battle outside is brutal, but one-sided. Even joining forces, Adam and Skeletor are like flies annoying a deity. Beastman joins the fray to protect the new goddess and ends up trading blows with Cringer. Down below, Teela and Andra find Duncan in the cells. Man-at-Arms tells Teela to push forward and find the sorceress, while he and Andra hold off the guards. When Teela finally reaches the chambers, a vision of the sorceress lays the truth on the table. If she wants the power to save the universe, Teela will have to follow in her mother's footsteps and abandon her mortal life and everyone she loves. God Lyn's plan becomes terrifyingly clear. She pulls Skeletor close and reveals her true motivation. She doesn't want to rule anything. She wants to unmake all of reality just to be absolutely certain that Skeletor will cease to exist, collecting the debt for a lifetime of pain. To seal the promise, she summons the forces of Subternia to the battlefield. Teela finally accepts her destiny and embraces the mantle of the sorceress, leaving behind the only life she knew. And the timing couldn't be more perfect, because the war inside the castle is absolute chaos. Randor and Marlena lead the soldiers on the front lines, and the king immediately comes face to face with Scareglow. The scales are tipping toward evil, and the masters of the universe are losing badly. But then, a familiar scarf begins to form, protecting Randor. Orko is back. The irony of the situation is that God Lyn herself accidentally brought him back when she decided to raise the dead. Dark magic always comes with fine print. The return is temporary, but Orko makes good use of his time. He takes down God Lyn long enough for Adam to recover the power sword and become He-Man. In an act of desperation, Adam restores Skeletor's powers on the condition that he helps save the universe, while Orko tosses Scareglow away, and Battlecat throws Beastman into the castle moat. God Lyn absorbs the power of Grayskull straight from the source. Teela flies up to face the villain, who underestimates her, unaware of her recent level up as the sorceress. The battle takes to the skies, and proving that some things never change, Skeletor betrays the Alliance at the first opportunity and attacks He-Man, but is quickly bulldozed by Ram-Man. In the end, Teela doesn't beat God Lyn with brute force, but with words, convincing the villain to give up on erasing the universe. Skeletor is defeated again, the rift is closed, and magic returns to Eternia. Andra is promoted to the new Man-at-Arms, and Evil Lyn goes to Trolla to rethink her life. As for Skeletor, he returns to Snake Mountain looking to boss everyone around, but the motherboard statue comes to life, infects the guy with a technovirus, and reveals the symbol of the Horde and its true master, Hordak. Peace in Eternia is always temporary. Adam and Orko now decide to take a stroll into the pleasant underworld of Subternia to rescue the souls of Clamp Champ and Fisto. Since Preternia was destroyed, the fallen heroes ended up in the wrong place. Scareglow, the local master, tries to stop the duo, but Adam invokes the power of Grayskull and brings He-Man into play. With some providential help from their friends and King Randor, they manage to escape with the souls and lock the gates of hell so Scareglow can't follow them. Far from there, Skeletor now goes by Skeletech, a bizarre cyborg version controlled by Motherboard, who is laying the groundwork for Hordak's invasion. Meanwhile, a much more human problem strikes the palace. King Randor is dying from multiple organ failure. Not even Teela's magic can heal him. In his final moments, Randor asks Adam to take the throne of Eternia. The weight of this is immediate, since ruling a kingdom means retiring He-Man's loincloth for good. It's the classic dilemma of having to choose between the crown and heroism. Trying to fix things on the spiritual plane, Teela summons the spirit of her mother, Teela Na, looking for a way to restore Paternia. The answer involves a typical RPG quest, obtaining the power of 3 ancient gods, starting with the magic of Ka in Darksmoke. Randor dies, and the preparations for Adam's coronation begin, but like in a true Game of Thrones episode, the king's long-lost brother Keldor appears out of nowhere demanding the throne. The guy, whom everyone thought had died in battle, returns at the worst possible moment. A quick flashback throws us into King Randor's past to explain the complicated family tree. Keldor is the older, bastard half-brother who was shipped away for having no claim to the throne. Back in the present, Keldor finishes telling Adam this sad story, pulling the bluff that, despite everything, he has no interest in the crown. Highly contradictory to his previous speech. Before Adam can question his uncle's intentions, a massive explosion rocks the city. The attack is Skeletor's doing, and Adam is almost relieved to be able to solve a problem with his fists instead of diplomacy. He-Man goes after the villain, who is using Motherboard's nanobots to unearth and control giant robots from Eternia's past. In the midst of the brawl, He-Man discovers that the Power Sword acts as an antivirus that cures the infected. While He-Man does the dirty work in the alley, Keldor leads the city's defense against one of the giant robots in the main square, emerging from the battle as a hero of the people. Adam sees this as the perfect way out of his political dilemma, and decides to pass the crown straight to Keldor. The only problem? The episode reveals that Keldor was, in fact, Skeletor himself in disguise, an illusion trick that Loki would give a standing ovation. As the monarchy collapses, Teela arrives in Darksmoke and finds the dragon Granamir on his last legs. She asks for the magic of Ka, but the dragon refuses. Out of nowhere, Evil Lyn appears, admitting that she's the reason the dragon is dying, and helps convince the creature. Granamir hands over a mystic staff, and Teela transforms into a bizarre green snake woman, hissing directly at the screen. A perfectly normal end to a day in Eternia. Skeletor and Motherboard are answering to Hordak. The supreme villain even lets out a few pig snorts out of pure nostalgia before ordering the two to continue their work. Shortly after, Skeletor starts hearing voices and has a vision of Keldor himself. The vision's message is clear. Skeletor is Keldor and should betray the Horde to rule Eternia alone. A brilliant idea that surely had already crossed the mind of a guy who breathes betrayal. Back in Eternos, he puts the plan into action and suggests that He-Man lead an attack on Snake Mountain. With the hero out of the way, Skeletor manipulates Andra, convincing her to create an antidote for the nanobot virus using the exact same technology. Anyone can see this is basically making more virus, but Andra enthusiastically accepts the task. Meanwhile, Man-at-Arms and Orko take the Power Sword to be modified by Gwildor, a guy who looks like he walked straight off the set of the movie Labyrinth in hopes of curing the infected. Gwildor spouts a bunch of incomprehensible gibberish, but promises to try. Over at Snake Mountain, He-Man hands out beatdowns to Spycore, Whiplash, and Webstore, only to realize that Skeletor isn't home, and he's fallen for an obvious distraction. The damage is already done. Motherboard has breached Grayskull's defenses. The Horde Armada covers the skies of Eternia, and Andra finishes her antidote, accidentally infecting the entire population. That's going to be tough to explain in a future job interview. In parallel, Evil Lyn trains Teela in the magic of Ka and gives some unsolicited relationship advice, suggesting she go for Adam. Except Adam has bigger problems at the moment. Captured by the Horde and dragged inside Grayskull, he discovers with horror the truth about his family lineage. Keldor Skeletor is Skeletor, which means his greatest enemy is, in fact, his uncle. Skeletor makes a point of rubbing the truth in Adam's face. In an unhinged monologue, he confirms his identity as Keldor, explaining he only recovered his memory thanks to Motherboard. To crown the villainous moment, he throws Queen Marlena into the same cell as Adam and walks off, promising more wickedness. Teela and Evil Lyn arrive in Eternos with very different priorities. Teela just wants to rescue Adam, while Evil Lyn is focused on stealing Skeletor's Havoc Staff to combine ancient powers and defeat Hordak once and for all. And speaking of defeating Hordak, Skeletor decides to move things up. With an impeccable taste for unnecessary drama, he rips off Motherboard's head and delivers it to Hordak in a box. The Horde leader obviously doesn't take the gift very well and goes on the offensive. The clash is brutal and drags on until Skeletor drives a blade into Hordak, eliminating the big boss for good. In the dungeons, Andra tries to make up for the antidote disaster. She frees Adam, Cringer, and Marlena, guiding the royal family out of the palace. There, they reunite with Teela, Evil Lyn, and Man-at-Arms, who, for some reason, chose to wear a super slick new suit in the middle of a war. The group brawls with Horde soldiers and their own virus-infected allies, like Ram Man and Buzz-Off. Amidst the chaos, Evil Lyn is quick. She sneaks around, steals Skeletor's Havoc Staff, and passes it to Teela. Wasting no time, Teela fuses Skeletor's weapon with the staffs of Zoar and the Serpent. The result is immediate. She floats into the sky, radiating an absurd amount of power as an uncontrollable energy takes over everything. Teela is trapped in a chaotic vortex, uncontrollably alternating between the forms of sorceress, snake goddess, and a demonic creature. Evil Lyn tries to stabilize the situation but doesn't have enough power. Salvation arrives in the hands of Orko and Gwildor, who show up at the exact right moment, bringing the upgraded power sword. Without hesitating, Adam steps into the maelstrom. He transforms into a new version of He-Man and, using the power of the sword, stabilizes Teela in her new form. And then, finally, the kiss happens. The moment that had been building for so long comes to fruition in the middle of the magical storm. He-Man takes the lead and divides the missions. He'll cure the population and deal with Skeletor. Teela needs to focus on restoring Preternia. Man-at-Arms and Andra will hold the lines against the Horde, while Orko and Evil Lyn step off screen to handle other fronts. On his way to Grayskull, He-Man uses the new sword to cleanse the virus and soon engages in a colossal beatdown with Skeletor. The battle escalates quickly, involving gigantic Horde machines. In the crossfire, the Elder Dragon Granomir appears to protect Teela, sacrificing his own life to ensure she finishes the spell, and she does it. Teela restores Preternia just in time, allowing the souls of the ancient heroes, including King Randor, to descend onto the battlefield to deliver a collective beatdown on Skeletor. The villain still tries to send Randor to Subternia in one last cheap shot, but He-Man settles the matter by driving the power sword into him. The impact of the antidote reverses the transformation, and Skeletor turns back into Keldor. In the rubble of the palace, He-Man makes a historic announcement. The monarchy is over, and Eternia is now a democratic republic. The population celebrates their newly won freedom, and Andra already announces she's running for president, which takes a lot of nerve for someone who accidentally infected the entire planet weeks ago. Away from politics, He-Man and Teela walk through the ruins to the applause of the people. They decide to move in together at Castle Grayskull, ready to defend Eternia from the next lunatic with a god complex who will inevitably show up.